OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Bang on 7:30, we are live this morning here with you on Wednesday, the 26th of May. And that's an important date. We'll get to that a little bit later on. But if you want to get in touch with OTB AM this morning, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180. It is the night of a big European final. We're all very excited about it. Are we? Are we very excited about this game tonight, Eoin?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you're a Manchester United fan, this kind of represents a moment where you're like, okay, Europe, we're back. We are here to win competitions once again. And this is our stepping stone to winning the Champions League and the Premier League over the next couple of seasons. So I think if you're a Manchester United fan, you're unbelievably excited about the possibility of seeing Solskjaer with a trophy in his hand.
And what's the difference between winning it tonight when Jose Mourinho won it?
It's a good point. Very good point. Better team. Like on paper, the comparison I've actually made this morning is not between this team and the Jose Mourinho team, but between this team and the Liverpool team, a team that actually went on and I had thought used the Europa League as a springboard for greater success, when in reality that wasn't really the case at all. Like, just going back through the 2016 Europa League final, it was more a sign that Liverpool needed to sign a lot of players than the fact that they were ready to actually contend at a higher level. And I think the fact that they actually lost in that final against Sevilla probably suggested that they needed to do that. Maybe if they'd won that final, they wouldn't have been as aggressive or maybe as urgent in the transfer market immediately afterwards. So I think that it was an important night for Liverpool, but I was certainly under the impression, I clearly misremembered, that this was the start of the great Liverpool era. It kind of was, but it took a while because they realised that they were still a good bit off the pace.
The team was awful.
Yeah, I have it here in front of me. It was Simon Mignolet in goal, a back four of Nathaniel Klein, Dejan Lovren, Kolo Toure, Alberto Moreno, who will be, of course, playing tonight. Midfield too, this is probably the best line in the pitch, to be honest. James Milner and Emre Can holding the fort down in front of that back four. That's maybe why he plays two holding midfielders that night, because of that back four. Firmino playing as a number 10, Coutinho on the left, Lallana on the right, and then Daniel Sturridge up front. They don't make Europe that season. This was win or bust for Liverpool. Like, I know that Liverpool fans will remember this like the back of their hand, but it's just kind of worth reminding ourselves that they didn't make Europe. This was a huge fixture for them to ensure that they could try and get back into the Champions League. That summer then is when they add Sadio Mane to the team and they add Gini Wijnaldum to the team. All of a sudden they've got a much better team and they finish fourth. And the summer after that then, it's Oxlade-Chamberlain, it's Mo Salah, Andy Robertson gets added, and then midway through that season, Virgil van Dijk comes, and all of a sudden Liverpool are ready to attack the top competitions. It wasn't the sort of team that had used the Europa League as a leg up to greatness. It was a team that used the Europa League as a wake-up call that the squad wasn't good enough.
Yeah, and it was actually a distraction from their ability to do stuff in the league. But maybe you're right. Maybe actually the right way of thinking about this is that it revealed a deep failure that forced the manager to change and to root out players. And I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of that going on with Manchester United. Maybe in 3 or 4 years' time we're going to look back on this United team and go, wow, look, there was a bunch of players in that team who just weren't good enough to be in a team that's supposed to win the league or in a team that's supposed to win the Champions League. Because so far we've been saying they're according to the table, the closest team to Manchester City, and they're 2 or 3 players short, but you know, every team is 2 or 3 players short when you don't have players who are good enough. Like, it's just hard to know. I think Henderson was in the team earlier in the competition. He played against Manchester United that season when in the 2-0 win that eventually put them through, because the second leg was a draw, or maybe the first leg was a draw and the second leg was a 2-0 win for them. But that Manchester United team as well was awful. I mean, apart from De Gea and Rashford, who gets subbed off, they had Fellaini and Schneiderlin. They had, I had to look this guy up, Guillermo Varela. Do you know that much about Guillermo Varela? He played right back for them that night against Liverpool. And I don't know if he was ever seen again. Smalling and Blind were the centre-backs and Marcus Rojo was the left-back. So these teams have changed massively over the last few seasons. And even from the Manchester United team that wins this trophy with Mourinho in charge, the team is significantly different as well. So, you know, it was Valencia, Smalling, Blind, Darmian, Herrera, Juan Mata, Fellaini. Pogba's in the team, Mkhitaryan and Rashford. So Pogba and Rashford really the only ones who will survive, unless there's some kind of disaster and Juan Mata gets called off the bench. De Gea was on the bench, obviously because they weren't playing him in the tournament. But how important is this? I don't know. That's the thing. Like, would a defeat tonight actually be the wake-up call that everybody needs to say, you know what, we need to invest 250 million in this squad this summer? Or is victory, actually, we're only one player short? What's the truth about that? I can't tell.
Well, I think that if we want to predict how we look back on this Manchester United squad in a few years' time, it's easy to pick out the players that we'll be like, God, how is that player even considered to be part of a title challenging team? And we'll pick out the likes of Fred, and we will pick out the likes maybe of Lindelof or Bailly as well. And that's kind of your lot, really, because with Martial maybe not in the starting team, he could have been another person who we look at and say over the next couple of years he might fade a little bit. I don't know what's going to happen with him. I don't know what the situation is with him at the moment, and it's very hard to predict where his career is going to go. So it's a little bit harsh to mention him in that light. It's very harsh, actually. But you can pick midfield and you can pick centre back and say that's clearly the area where we'll be looking back on and say they've strengthened that area on certain summers. So it's not a guaranteed springboard, that's for sure. But it is still a little bit of a coming out party, I think, for United tonight.
The other thing that Liverpool did was they sold Coutinho and they released a lot of funds, and they used those funds really well. Is there a standout player who might be available for transfer, whose value might be peaking after a big tournament this year, that they might be able to get some money? I know the market's likely to be deflated, but now is the time to sell Pogba, surely.
It's so akin to Coutinho, but it's probably more obvious in the sense that Manchester United fans are more split on him. With Coutinho, I think there was a sense that Liverpool were selling their best player, and obviously it precipitated Liverpool actually writing in a Barcelona clause, or a La Liga clause, wasn't it, into a lot of their future transfers, where they would have an added tax if anybody was to go to those sort of clubs. Essentially, if a team was going to come and cherry-pick that Liverpool squad, they'd have to pay an additional price for that player. I'm not sure if that would actually necessarily happen with Paul Pogba. I'm not sure if he's as highly valued as Coutinho was in that Liverpool team, for example. And I think what we've seen at times this season are glimpses from Pogba that he could actually work in a team next season that can challenge for the Premier League. That there is just like two parts around him that need to be fixed.
Yeah, the trouble is, I don't, you know, that's now, and there's another contract up for negotiation, and it's been so short-lived over the course of. If you think he was playing in the team back when they won this competition under Mourinho, like, he's been around a long time, and they still haven't quite worked out how to get a full season of brilliance from him.
And those glimpses that I've said have come in various different positions as well. Like there was like those couple of winners that he scored back in January. They'd kind of come from more central positions. I know he kind of cut in on the right to score one of the winners. I can't remember who it was against at this point. The whole season just mashes into one. Then there was moments in the Europa League where he's coming in off the left-hand side. And I mean, maybe not finding his ideal position throughout the season has been a bit of an issue when it comes to Paul Pogba. Now, Solskjaer will say he's used him perfectly, that they've got him when they needed him, and they've got good performances out of him when they needed him, and you expect him to be important in a big game like a Europa League final. The question marks, though, are around what will Manchester United try and do this summer. Like, the Jack Grealish rumours have kind of escalated over the last couple of days. There's been reports that there has been lobbying on the part of the players in the Old Trafford dressing room.
That always works.
To actually get Grealish to come to the squad. So, I mean, he's a completely different player to Paul Pogba, but it does have a knock-on impact on Paul Pogba. Those sort of advanced positions that Pogba has occasionally played in this season, they would then be occupied by Jack Grealish. It would very much be a Grealish-Fernandes situation where they're leading the charge behind your number 9. Paul Pogba may be less involved in those positions, where I think he's been outstanding in those sort of positions on the left of a 3 in the 4-2-3-1, if you want to put it like that. So I don't know. It's like it's a very tricky one to say. The big carrot is that they will get a massive fee for him, you would expect, especially if he has a good Euros this summer, and it may be hard to turn that down. I think if everybody costs the same amount of money in this world, I think you keep Paul Pogba, but maybe they get a few extra players.
Well, let me just give you a straight swap. Say you get money for Pogba, and the money you get in, you can spend on Jadon Sancho, and that's the opportunity. Do you do that?
I'm not sure. Like I'm not entirely sure on Jadon Sancho at this point. Like I think that there was a reason why Manchester United did not offer crazy money for him last year. They had their ceiling, and he would have improved their team this year. But they knew that Mason Greenwood was going to have some sort of peak this year. He was going to step up this season. It took a while.
Is Greenwood on number 9? Ultimately, it's...
that's where he
Yeah.
may end, but I think their best football this season has been with Greenwood on the right and Cavani up front. Now, you can't rely on Cavani as a part of the squad in the long term. So if they see Greenwood as that 9 maybe next season, then of course you go out and get Jadon Sancho. But I don't think that's going to be the case next season.
Well, again, the same rumours that had the United players lobbying Grealish had, lobbying for Grealish had Solskjaer saying, actually, I prefer Sancho, and similarly, Dortmund are now saying, you can leave this summer because we've got that season out of you, and actually your value might be coming down off its peak. So say I give you sell Pogba, you get Sancho, and you've another 20, 25 million left in the transfer kitty. Do you do that?
Yeah, I think that's I think in the long run, that's probably a better move.
Look, maybe the long run is the right thing. I don't know.
For next season, I'm not actually convinced that is this massive step forward. Like, he's obviously a phenomenal player, Sancho, and there's obviously a bit of versatility to where he can play. I just think that over the last couple of weeks, we were talking about net gains when it came to Dublin yesterday, for example. In this current Manchester United squad, like Mason Greenwood on the right, Bruno Fernandes through the middle, maybe Rashford on the left and Cavani up front. Jadon Sancho improves that. He definitely does. But to what extent does he improve it? I think Greenwood has just been so good over the last couple of months, and he may actually be the player who makes way in an ideal world for that. But maybe one of them can just play on the left, and Rashford is the one who maybe misses out. But maybe it's going to be a kick from him next season as well.
Maybe the three of them play behind Cavani for next season. And
then what about Bruno?
Well, Bruno plays in the middle of midfield alongside this number 6 that we keep saying. And away you go.
I think the one thing you don't do as Manchester United manager is change anything you've done with Bruno Fernandes during this season. Like, outside of Harry Kane and Ruben Dias, he was the player of the season for me. And like, I think that a few things have worked for Manchester United recently. One of the things that they managed to absolutely nail was that January transfer window at the start of 2020. And Bruno Fernandes is something that you just set and forget. Do not mess with Bruno Fernandes.
Well, so he plays in the same position, but you have somebody who can cover that second central midfield person. Like, that's about position on the pitch, right? That's the type of thing that you could work out in a training ground.
Yeah, maybe, but in front of a better number 6 alongside Scott McTominay would be the best version of Bruno Fernandes, I suspect, next season.
Well, then maybe you just have depth. And over the course of the 60 games that you'll play next season, that you have a first team that plays once, twice, 3 times, and every other time somebody is injured or somebody has too many minutes and you're resting them.
Listen, it's amazing. It's absolutely. There's no question if you're talking to me about depth. It's like if you've got a squad that you're just suddenly putting Jadon Sancho on top of that and nobody's leaving the club. I mean, that's an unbelievable array of attacking talent immediately. If Martial comes back next season and manages to refine some of the form that he showed immediately after lockdown, I think we forget that after the pandemic he was really good for those couple of months.
But then after that, when he was fit, he wasn't good.
No, but then there was also moments this season, like against Manchester City, for example, when they beat them, where Martial just went full beast mode. And for me, like, maybe it's too forgiving, but I think that there are certain players who have been badly affected by injury, badly affected by the scenario in the world over the last few months. And even showing glimpses is sometimes reason enough to keep a player, because who knows what was going on in that player's life. Like, of course, if the question is whether or not they just add Sancho to the mix, and if they can forget about everything else with regards to balancing the books in their attacking department, I think, of course, you add him. He's an unbelievable player.
As long as you're fixing all of the other problems in the team. We'll get to that a little bit later on. 7:44 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. On top of that, you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream. If you're a Manchester United fan, we want to hear what you expect from tonight, what you hope is the outcome, whether or not victory tonight is some harbinger of greater success, or if the Liverpool model of actually the team failing at this point is a bit of a wake-up call. And you think as well, when you were saying about being competitive next season, Liverpool weren't competitive the next season. It actually took them a number of years to layer on the success.
They finished 4th the following season after that Europa League final.
And in a way that was a little bit of success, because it was it was kind of pointing in the right direction, but it did take radical surgery and amazing luck in the transfer market, in that 5 or 6 transfers in a row all hit, and they all turned out to be amazing. So I don't know. If you think that's possible, we'd love to hear from you. We've got a busy show for you. I'm going to tell you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Daniel Harris standing by. We're going to get to him in a moment. Keith Wood is going to join us at 20 minutes past 8 for an update on Keith Wood's State of the Union. We're going to talk about the potential for a Lions League and where we're going now, given that the TV deals have all been done. And despite all the prognostications about rugby going behind a paywall, it is going to be free to air for the Six Nations for the next while. John Duggan at 8:40 with this week's Virtual Insanity. We're doing our Euros cheat sheet. It's Ukraine. Royal Blood. Who are they on? Are they rock stars?
Yeah, they are. We're speaking today.
That's an après match joke, by the way.
Yeah, it's who was that? Was that Billow on après match?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. They are. Well, we're speaking to one of Royal Blood today, who is a massive football fan, Ben the drummer, who they played Tree Arena, they played a couple of venues around Ireland over the last couple of years, and they have a new #1 album out. So chatted to them a little about Super League, chatted to them a little bit about their plans for the next couple of months.
All right. Well, the Euros cheat sheet today, are we still on Group B?
No, we're on to Group C.
Woo.
We are turning our attention to the Netherlands. As ever, we're giving ourselves 90 seconds. So let's hit that timer there. So the Netherlands finished second in Germany's qualifying group to finally get back to a tournament. They didn't qualify for the last Euros or the last World Cup, and they lost all of their games at Euro 2012. So it's been 13 years since they've won a game at a European Championships. This has basically been a period where their darts players have been better sporting ambassadors for the country than the footballers. It's worth reminding ourselves that Johan Cruyff described the Dutch style of play at the 2010 World Cup as ugly, vulgar, hard, hermetic, hardly eye-catching, hardly football style, and things under Van Gaal weren't much prettier. So style is as important as results in Dutch football, as we all know, and everything seemed absolutely perfect after a little period of time under Ronald Koeman. He was loyal to the 4-3-3, results instantly got better, but it is a very bad sign when your manager leaves you for the allure of Josep Maria Bartomeu, and it's even worse when he's replaced by Frank de Boer, who Jose Mourinho once described as the worst manager in the history of the Premier League. Now, de Boer initially went on the longest ever winless streak for a new Netherlands head coach and has since shown a pathetic inability to fix ACLs, and as a result, Virgil van Dijk has bowed out of this summer's tournament. The good news for the Netherlands is that Frankie de Jong has improved considerably under Koeman at Barcelona this season, 7 goals and 8 assists, and he is going to be the most important Dutch player going into this year's tournament. Finally, let us have a look at the home kit first of all. You look at that and you say to yourself, how isn't it international consensus that orange is the greatest colour in the world? I mean, that is just sensational. And then the away kit.
Some issues, obviously, but go on.
This is a polo shirt that would just about be passable.
That's not the away kit. That's not the away kit. That can't. You know, you got the wrong picture there.
No,
that's like
is.
a training top. It's not.
No, it is. I
don't accept that. I can't accept it.
They've gone for the buttons.
Erroneous.
They've gone for the buttons. I couldn't believe it either.
That's like middle-aged man going to play golf thinking I'm going to look cool with the kids. Look, it's Nike. Rory McIlroy told me this.
Yeah.
That's not true. I don't believe you. You've done bad journalism there, Eoin. That can't be correct.
I checked it once. I'm a good journalist. I checked it once, and it definitely has buttons.
Really?
I saw buttons referred to in, I think it was a Goal article, goal.com article, who were going through all the kits.
This is mad.
Yeah, like buttons on a jersey.
It's a golf shirt.
It's a golf shirt, yeah. Pitch and put shirt, I would say.
It is pitch and put.
Like, it's not even golf standard. It's like the kids who play on the PGA Tour from Oklahoma State who love to wear that little bit of orange. Like, that's perfect for them. They'll be wearing that in a few years' time.
Right.
At least the home jersey's nice.
For Florida. Right, players to watch out for.
Yeah, so we mentioned Frankie de Jong. Let's actually just mention the attack here first of all. Memphis Depay is the man. People are saying that the Netherlands don't have a great attacker. He's 27 years old at this point. He's going to play on the left. He's also been used as a false 9 under Frank de Boer. He scored 6 goals in qualifying and was, by all accounts, just their best player throughout. He suffered a serious knee injury last season, but has come back incredibly well this year. A brilliant club season with Lyon, 20 goals and 12 assists in the league, and he captained them at times as well. He's now being linked with a move to Barcelona. So Memphis Depay is their attacker. As I say, could play on the left. If he does so, Luc de Jong will play through the middle, and then maybe Bergwijn of Feyenoord will play on the right-hand side. But they've also got Bergwijn in there, Anwar El Ghazi of Aston Villa has been named in their extended squad, and Promises in there as well. So they've got a few options, but maybe lacking that out-and-out number 9 that can win them the tournament. I mentioned Frankie de Jong in midfield. Gini Wijnaldum is amazing for the Netherlands. He scored 8 goals in qualifying, was their top scorer in qualifying. Just this free role where he sometimes actually just pops up behind the front three, box to box, and like he was brilliant under Koeman. He's been really good under De Boer. And then it's just that third midfielder spot which is up for grabs at the moment. It's going to be a shootout between Davy Klaassen, who's had a good season with Ajax, Martin de Roon, who's been in the team for Atalanta all season long, and Donny van de Beek, who we've seen little of all season long. So maybe Klaassen is the front runner there. And then in defence, like, it's interesting comparing this team to the 2014 team, which, as we know, got to a World Cup semi-final, shocked Spain on the opening weekend of that tournament. Their defence, even without Virgil van Dijk, I would contend it's better now than it was back then. They've still got Stefan de Vrij, who's been playing brilliantly with Inter Milan. And the change is that Ron Vlaar is out from 2014. And Matthijs de Ligt is in. So I think that's 100% a step up. And I think maybe the worries about the defensive issues are a tad overplayed, given you compare them with that 2014 team and it's actually a little bit better. But I still think there are enough issues in this team to suggest that they won't go all the way in this, even though that's how it looked in 2019. I'm tentatively going to predict that they're going to be semi-finalists because they're on a relatively easy side of the group. Like we've gone through, who was it yesterday? Belgium. Their path to the final is really, really tough. I do think the Netherlands will top their group, then they'll beat Sweden, then they'll beat Turkey, although like that one could go either way, but then they will lose the semi-final because it'll be either England, Portugal or Spain in that semi-final. Especially England or Portugal, I suspect, would take this Netherlands team. All right,
that is Eoin's predictions. That is your 90-second Euros cheat sheet for the start of Group C, the Netherlands. Let's move on, because the Europa League final tonight in Gdansk, big opportunity for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to add a trophy. An important day to Manchester United's history. Was it John Duggan pointing out this morning that the 26th of May is, of course, the date of the fixture in 1999. Manchester United won the European Cup final with 2 late goals, in case you didn't know what happened there. Daniel Harris, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Everyone all right?
All the talk in the build-up to this is about doing it for Busby and doing it for Ferguson, and that weight of history is important for clubs as a touchstone, but sometimes for a new team it can be a little bit difficult to just be themselves when the weight of history is so heavy on them.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt the players are too fussed about it being Matt Busby's birthday or anything like that. I think they're under pressure because they're under pressure. They're playing a final. They're expected to win. They expect themselves to win. And if they don't, they'll look a bit silly. And I think that will be the pressure. I don't think it's particularly the weight of history, because I think that relative to just having to win a final, and a final they're expected to win, I think that would probably be enough pressure on its own.
Is this team adept at dealing with pressure? And in that context, is not having Harry Maguire there almost... I mean, it's obviously hugely important any time that he's not playing, given how well he's played, given how well the 2 replacements are playing as a tandem. But on a night when there's added pressure, not having somebody who has been a good captain for you, it just gets magnified.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one of the reasons Solskjaer always plays Fred and McTominay in big games is that he doesn't really trust the defence, even with Harry Maguire. And missing him will make a big difference. It's not just the actual defending. I think it's also he plays with much more authority and composure than any of the other centre-backs. And we saw it against Liverpool, really, where they conceded 4 goals. And I think with Maguire playing, they don't let in 4 goals in that game. Obviously, Villarreal don't have attackers as good as Liverpool do, so there is that. But as to whether or not this team are good under pressure, most of the time they've needed a result, they've managed to find one. They've come from behind a lot. I don't think they'll be wanting to come from behind in this one. I think the question is more whether they can use the pressure to come out fast, which they did last season against Sevilla, where they lost the semi-final in the end with some sketchy defending and some terrible finishing. But for an hour, they played more or less as well as they played under Solskjaer. So if usually when they are under pressure or it is a big game, they're able to come out and play well. They did it against City away when they won. Even the Liverpool game a couple of weeks ago that they lost, they played really well for 20 minutes till they tired and Liverpool started to play better.
How important is winning the trophy in the overall scheme of things? Is it just tonight's game on its own and this trophy is all it is, or is it a signifier of something more?
Well, I mean, the players say that is that signifier. It lets them know that they can win. And Gary Neville always said that the League Cup that the United team that he played for won in 2006, when they haven't really challenged for the title properly for a couple of seasons. gave them the confidence to then, even though it was against Wigan and they walloped them in the final, it gave them the confidence to know that they could then go and challenge for the league the following season. And it doesn't always happen, but usually a team that wins the league have won something else first. And it will definitely give them it will tell them that they can turn up on a big stage and they can get the job done. And that is something that they don't currently know. And it's also like coping with the pressure of being expected to win, because if you look at how United did in the league this season, as soon as they got into a position where it looked like they could challenge for the title, they started to not win games. And I don't think that's simply a factor of pressure. It was also to do with fitness, where players started to get injured, and it was at that stage of the winter where everyone was exhausted. And United got to that point where the run that they had, where they got beat by Sheffield United and they didn't win a couple of other games. It was around the time that they ran out of options, because enough players were injured so that they couldn't really rotate the team. So there was also that going on, but they also managed to not win points once the pressure was on them to actually try and do something to win the title. So they do need to convince themselves that they're able to do that. And it may not result in them suddenly going on to win the league, but we can be sure that if they do win tonight, it's not going to do them any harm.
Does this feel more important than the Europa League final that Jose took United to?
Not necessarily, I think, because the one under Mourinho, I mean, it's always you're trying to win it because you want to win the trophy. But the one under Mourinho qualified them for the Champions League, which they've already done here, and it also came the day after the Manchester bombing, so there was a lot more than football going on. So I'd say probably not. And even if United do get beaten tonight, this is still a good team, and with 2 or 3 additions, it could be a team good enough to challenge for the title, and that isn't going to change because of one match tonight, but it will help them if they can get it over the line tonight.
Was your sense in that season under Jose, when they won the Europa League, that they were also 2 or 3 signings away from winning the league, or did you know at that point that actually no, this is kind of just a moment really, and there's not going to be a title push next season?
I didn't think they're as good as this. Well, that's for sure. I mean, like that team, it had Fellaini in it, it had Darmian in it, had Mkhitaryan in it, had Mata in it. The team that United have now has much better players in it. So did I think that they were close to winning the title after the Europa League? I thought that they could do something the following season, because I felt like City didn't have much at the back. But I remember it turning out that didn't matter at all, because teams weren't going to be able to get at City's defence. So whatever I would have thought at the time, definitely, even if I would have thought United had a chance of winning the title the following season, I just would have been talking nonsense ultimately. Whereas this team has much better players than that team did, and it's a much better team than that team did. Like, you can see that this team is developing, and the best team that Mourinho team beaten, I can't even think who it is. Whereas this team has beaten pretty much everyone.
Where do you stand now on Pogba's future, given that we're entering peak transfer speculation season? Harry Kane obviously is up for grabs, and between now and the start of the Euros, a lot of speculation will happen, and either deals get done in advance of it or everything gets postponed for 3 weeks. What do you think? Is Pogba a Manchester United player next season?
I think probably, because it seems unlikely that anyone's going to pay enough money to take him away. And as to whether I think that's a good thing, I mean, it's a tricky one with Pogba, because since United got good, Pogba's also been really good. And the problem is that for as long as Ole feels he can't put Pogba and Bruno and one other in midfield, there's always going to be a slight imbalance to the team, because what we're likely to see tonight, I think, is that one of Rashford or Greenwood isn't going to play. And I would want both of them to play. I mean, Rashford is probably United's most reliable big game performer, and Greenwood is brilliant and in brilliant form. And I don't particularly want to see only one of those to play, because Pogba's playing on the left wing, because they don't trust the midfield and the defence to have him play in midfield. So going forward, that would be always my problem with Pogba, is whether you can balance the team effectively with him in it. But I think practically speaking, I'd be surprised if there was an offer that was big enough to make United sell, because the teams that might buy Pogba, I don't think have enough of a need for Pogba. I mean, I guess Paris is the only one. They could do with some class in midfield, and Pogba would probably go quite well there. But I don't think Juventus or Madrid or Barcelona are going to be spending their money on Pogba this summer.
That issue that you've talked about is one we were talking about a little bit earlier on. You want Greenwood in your team, you want Rashford in your team, and you want Cavani in your team, and you want Bruno in your team. So how do you actually build a team that includes Pogba week in, week out in next season's league campaign? And it kind of comes back to who that other midfielder is. And if you could merge Fred and McTominay and turn them into one player, bingo. But unfortunately, there is no Dr. Frankenstein who can do such a thing.
Yeah, I feel like I'd still want someone better than McFred if McFred was one person. Because ultimately, like, McTominay's a box-to-box player. And if you limit him running and his running power, then you're limiting what that player can give you. I think if you get if you find a better centre-back than Lindelof, who's stronger, more dominant and with recovery pace, and you find a number 6 as well, the right number 6, then you're starting to look at a team that can tolerate Pogba and Bruno in a defensive setting, and they're going to be able to defend well enough. I think one of the things I do think about Pogba, though, and Bruno together is that, and I've said this before, that they're high-risk, high-reward players, which means against good teams, they're going to turn over the ball a lot because they're trying things, and you're going to be giving possession to teams who can hurt you with it. I don't think it matters against most teams in the league, but against the top teams, Pogba and Bruno together is going to hand the other team a lot of possession, and I don't feel like Pogba is kind of quick enough about the pitch that you'll be able to dominate possession with Pogba and Bruno, whereas there might be other kinds of players who give you, going forward, what similar output to Pogba. I mean, I think the thing with Pogba is a bit of a unicorn in that there aren't any players like him. There aren't really players with his dexterity, imagination, ability to see a pass, and his size. And that is an incredible combination when it works. But when it doesn't work, it can sometimes go against you. And I think that if United did sell Pogba, then the player that they would be looking for to replace him wouldn't be exactly the same player. And not just because that player doesn't exist, but because if you're designing a player, you're looking for someone who can give you Pogba's attacking output and Pogba's variety, but also do a better job of helping you control the game, which to me seems like Pogba's biggest weakness.
And in a way, we don't really know what Solskjaer wants from his teams, because in one way he's been forced to use the midfielders that he's been given, and Pogba has been there, and Pogba has obviously been brilliant in moments and brilliant over stretches. And like, I couldn't tell you what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's overriding and overarching football philosophy is. I suspect probably because he has had to deal with the players and the playing staff that he's had. There might be a style that he wants to espouse and develop, but I'm not sure if he's had that opportunity. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Is there one? Have we not had the opportunity because he's been forced into not showing us by the playing staff?
I think when United play at their best, we're seeing what he wants. He wants them to play. He wants to play on the front foot. He wants them to dominate the ball, and he wants them to play with width. And he wants there to be quick link-ups. And I think we see quite a lot of that. I mean, I think that it's not a complex vision of football, what Ole wants, but football doesn't have to be a complex game. And I think that if you're solid at the back and you have good attackers, you'll be a pretty good team. And I think that's what we see from United. I don't think that he's as prescriptive as Guardiola and Klopp in terms of what he expects from his team. But when they play big games, particularly, you can see that they're trying things. I mean, even against Wolves at the weekend, they played a 4-2-4, which is not something that they would usually do, but he thought that with the players that he had against the team that he was playing, that was the best way of going about it, and it worked pretty well. But in general, the way that he sends his team out, because if you also think about it, previously, you sort of had a big game formation as well, where he'd play 3 at the back with Luke Shaw as the left centre-back, and then he'd play split strikers as well. So that was a different way of doing it. Now what you're seeing from United is he's trying to play more or less the same way in every game as the team has improved. And doesn't always work out perfectly, but he's looking to be secure at the back and dominate the ball and allow the players in front of that to express themselves, and for the wide players to get wide and to come in off the touchline and look to score goals. And I think that having a proper centre forward is making a big difference to that too.
What does the potential signing of another attacker who's not a centre forward then do to this team, Daniel? Because I know that we've seen a story over the last couple of days that Jack Grealish is linked with Manchester United and the players want him to come to Old Trafford.
Grealish is one I'd be fairly surprised about, because he tends to play from the left, and United have Rashford who can do that. They have Amad Diallo who could. I mean, he prefers to play from the right. They have Martial. I mean, they might do it, but if you're playing Grealish, then you're effectively saying that in a big game where you want to play Grealish and Rashford, then it is only going to be one of them. I would imagine that the Sancho is more likely, but I think the thing with Sancho is also Sancho would mainly play on the right, but United have Greenwood who can play there. They have Diallo who looks like he's ready to start affecting games in the Premier League, and they also have Elanga who's a bit further behind, but they have high hopes for him, and they have high hopes for Shoretire. So if I was looking at United now, what I would be looking for would be a centre back and a number 6. And if they got those two players, I don't think they'll be short of goals, because I think those two players would enable them to be more offensive because they were more trusting in the defence. So that would be where I was looking, but it may be they may decide that Sancho's available, the price is a good price, and they think he's such a good player that they can't be without him, and they want a natural right winger who's coming to the peak of their powers right now. So they may decide to do that, but it definitely isn't where I would be starting with this team.
Do you expect Manchester United to do the obvious thing? I mean, for so many years we've watched teams ignore the glaring holes in their squad and not buy the players that the whole world thinks they need. Is there an indication that they believe they need a centre-back and a number 6?
I'm sure that Ole wants a centre-back because, he knows, because I don't think he thinks that Fred and McTominay are good enough in those positions. I don't think he wants to be thinking tonight about who's he going to leave out, Rashford, Pogba or Greenwood. So, I think if I was guessing, I'd say he wants a centre-back more than he wants a number 6. But I think that, he probably does know that he needs something, because he talks, like he seemed to actually bob the other day when he was told that players wanted that I can't remember if it was Paul Scholes or Gary Neville, but someone said that Fred and McTominay aren't good enough, and Ole was talking about balance, and he will know that Fred and McTominay are not, for example, as good as the players he played with, so he knows what the standard is, but he plays them because he needs them to protect the defence. So I do think he knows that those players are required, but the players that are required, the players that the board will let you have, because Jadon Sancho is someone who I'm sure the board would think, well, if we get him, sponsors will want to be associated with him. He'll be worth some money too. Yeah. So I think there will be a bit of that, and the fact that if he is available, he might be available for less than they paid last season, less than their offer that was turned down last season. And I wouldn't be surprised if that amused the suits and that pleased the suits to make Borussia Dortmund look a bit silly. So I think there'll be a lot of things going on there. But I would be amazed if someone like me had noticed what the team needed, and someone like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who manages them, who played for Alex Ferguson, who played in European Cup winning teams and knows what a good team looks like, if I had noticed what this team needed and he had somehow not noticed, that would be surprising to me.
What are the chances that Harry Kane is a Manchester United player next season?
It seems unlikely that they would pay the transfer fee that Daniel Levy's going to want. I think otherwise it would obviously be a move that made relative sense to both. I mean, I'm sure Kane would prefer to go to City because ultimately he's leaving Tottenham because he wants to win trophies. And if you go to City, he could be more or less certain that he's going to start winning stuff. United is a bit more of a punt. Like, that doesn't mean that there's no cachet. Like, I think that amongst players, like being a Manchester United player still carries some weight, and being the guy that turned United into Championship winners again after 7 years also probably is seductive in some ways. But I'm sure that playing for Pep Guardiola and playing for City would be his first choice. I think that I'm not sure that City will stretch the amount of money, because what City tend to do is they tend to buy as many sort of 50 to 70 million pound players as it needs till they get the right one. But they haven't gone and spent that sort of money on transfer fees. I feel like they're spending more of their budget on wages once they get to the kind of the point of the player that they want. And then so if he has a choice between United and City, I'm sure he'll go to City. I think that I'm not sure that either club will pay what Daniel Levy needs, but it's tricky to know what their apparent gentleman's agreement actually is with regard to him leaving in the summer. If as reportedly that's what there is, but who knows if that's got a transfer fee on it, or if either club can find the sort of money or the sort of make weights that Spurs are going to want. So perhaps United could toss them Martial, who knows? Because we don't know who their manager is going to be, so we don't know who their manager might want in part exchange. But ultimately, do I think Harry Kane is going to play for United next season? I guess the answer to that is no.
All right, last one. Prediction for tonight?
Oh gosh, I'm not going to sit here and predict United to get beat in the final. I don't think. I don't think they're going to lose to Villarreal. Ultimately, I think that you can obviously see a way that they could lose, because particularly without Maguire, that defence could ruin things for them at any moment. But ultimately, in most games, you would think a team's going to have to score 3 times to beat this United team, because they're too good going forward not to score at least twice. So no, I think United will win.
All right, a classic either way. Daniel, good stuff. Thanks a million. Enjoy the game.
See you guys. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good day.
Daniel Harris giving us some thoughts there about what might happen at Manchester United and what tonight might look like. What do you think is going to happen?
I think Manchester United will win tonight. Villarreal, Unai Emery. I mean, that semi-final just it was outrageous, really. The first half of the first leg against Arsenal, the way they just cut through them like at will, as if somebody had opened a gate for them and they had kind of slowly strolled down the walkway to constant opportunities, minute after minute after minute. Like, I know people have complained quite a bit about Manchester United's options in central midfield, but at least they exist. Like, it just felt that Arsenal's midfield just did not exist in that first leg against Villarreal. So all McTominay and Fred need to do tonight is just exist. Just be there. Just stop. Like, if somebody's running towards you, just stand in his way. Don't open the gate for him to walk on through and create an opportunity, because once they have opportunities, they might score. They are professional footballers. Once they get into good positions, they might actually do something with it. Their goalkeeper is an absolute Achilles heel that Manchester United should, when the goalkeeper gets the ball, just lump it down on top of his head immediately, with Edinson Cavani sticking the arse out into him and, I don't know, just causing some sort of long ball trouble whenever they feel like a 6th or 7th goal tonight. Have they announced that they're definitely going to start him? Because there's some doubt that they might pick the good goalkeeper for the final. I'm not sure. I don't know why. Was the other guy injured, or why did he actually play the second? The second leg. There was one moment when Arsenal had gone 70 minutes without even trying to win the game, and then they accidentally kicked the ball towards the goalkeeper, and it was like, oh, that guy just dropped the ball. Why didn't we do that for the last hour of this game? Villarreal are a very beatable side, but Unai Emery, he is the ruler of this competition. Yeah. He will. If there's one manager who can upset a team like United in the final, it's certainly him. But I'm not sure if he has a team. That Ajax team that Manchester United beat in the final when they last won the competition in 2017 had Frankie de Jong and Donny van de Beek on the bench. They also had Bertrand Traore and Hakim Ziyech playing. With Matthijs de Ligt at centre-back and Davinson Sanchez alongside him. It was an interesting Ajax team, but that's the type of... it's players at that stage of their career where they haven't quite made it who tend to make up these Europa League final teams, because the really good teams are in the Champions League. So anyway, if you are a Manchester United fan and you have expectations for tonight, we'd love to hear them. Reminder that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Give me the confidence to tackle the day ahead. It is 13 minutes past 8. Plenty more to come. We're going to hear from Keith Wood. We'll take you through the papers next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Our exclusive OTB Sports UEFA Champions League final preview show,
in partnership with Pepsi Max, takes place this Thursday, May 27th. We'll be joined by Manchester City and Chelsea legend Sean Wright-Phillips. Manchester United hero Teddy Sheringham will relive that night in Barcelona, and we'll get the thoughts of Republic of Ireland's 2-time MVP winner Denise O'Sullivan.
You must be registered for the night to see the live show. Get your tickets on otbsports.com/events.
Pepsi Max, maximum taste, no sugar, hashtag for the love of it.
First up, a Go Loud original from News Talk.
Get all the news you need to start your day with First Up, the podcast that brings you stories, analysis and interviews with the top newsmakers. First Up, available each weekday morning from 7 a.m. on Go Loud.
Subscribe to this podcast for free on the Go Loud app.
At Online Tradesmen, we've never been busier. And if you're a trade professional, there's never been a better time to join us. Access over €17 million worth of jobs nationwide every month, along with e-learning and other supports. Need a website for your business? It's included in your membership. And on average, Online Tradesmen members get up to 10 times their fee back in new sales, marketing tools and savings. Apply today at onlinetradesmen.ie. Online Tradesmen, the home of qualified trade professionals.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
15 minutes past 8 here on OTB AM. If you've just joined us, you're very welcome. We've had Daniel Harris on previewing the Europa League final tonight. You can get that, of course, on the podcast. The full podcast goes live every morning at 10 o'clock, and the best place to get it these days is on the OTB Sports app. We'll get to Keith Wood in 1 second, but I want to bring you through the newspapers very briefly on OTBsports.com. Our lead story is I've won Irish titles and passed out in my car afterwards with the pain. This is a story from Arthur James O'Dea talking to one of our very best 10-pin bowlers who has an incredible story about her suffering with endometriosis.
Yeah, this is like an absolutely phenomenal piece. I knew nothing about this. I'm not sure about you. I certainly wasn't familiar with the story about Aoife Hall, who is just this absolutely generational talent when it comes to bowling. Her father, I think, would go on dates with her mother at bowling alleys, and that's how he got into the sport. And then when she was very young, she became she just got brought along to the bowling alleys all the time and became this absolute superstar. As you mentioned, so many health issues throughout her life and into her 20s. These absolutely visceral accounts in the piece about some of the stuff that she's gone through is just so harrowing to read, and to actually be able to maintain and to be able to continue to play is remarkable. It's an unbelievable career, and one of these things that we just have never really spoken about. It's a brilliant piece. It's up on the homepage right now. Yeah,
you've got to get onto the OTBsports.com and check this out. It is educational about the sport and educational about the condition, and also just the level of commitment that some people have to their sport, that they're so dedicated to it that they will literally do anything to play in it and to compete at the highest level. So that's the story of Aoife Hall as told by Arthur James O'Dea this morning, and well worth getting into and getting your hands on OTBsports.com. It is 17 minutes past 8 this morning. Let's turn our attention to rugby. I'm delighted to say Keith Wood is with us. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, gents. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. There's some rugby on the field that we'll talk about in a while, but I did want to talk to you about some of the off-field stuff that's happened since last we've spoken. It's been confirmed now that ITV and BBC will continue to show the Six Nations in England. This comes hot on the heels of the news that Virgin Media and RTE are going to be showing it in Ireland. And I think this is a rebuttal of most people's worst fears about what CVC would do when they come in as part shareholders of the Six Nations. The assumption had been that everything would go behind a paywall and every last cent would be wrung out of the TV rights. That doesn't appear to be the case. Does this change how we feel about the investment money from CVC? Does it change in any way how we feel about the future of the game?
Yeah, I'm still confused, or not conflicted. I don't know what the word is. I don't really know what to think yet about CVC, about what they will bring to the table. But what they've done now is given a sense of certainty that it's going to be free to air. And I think if you look at other sports over the last 20 years, the ones that drop off in participation are the ones that have gone behind a paywall. And that makes life an awful lot more difficult for the game to grow, even though it's more beneficial for the players at the top of the game. So look, I thought it was great news, because the amount of millions that can watch it in the UK and in Ireland, you know, it just takes an awful lot more pressure off it. And also, I think international sport in particular leaves a bad taste if you have to pay pay-per-view to watch it or go behind a paywall. I just think it makes it very, very uncomfortable for me. And I go back to sitting with my mother in the early 80s, listening to Fred Cogley, watching RTE and watching the great rugby of the Five Nations at that stage. That's the memory of my youth. You want the kids of today to have elements of that as well, and not to just be behind a paywall.
One of the big conversations that we would have been having around State of the Union when COVID hit first was what the future of the rugby calendar was like. And recently we had Stuart Lancaster on, and he was saying, you know, in the Southern Hemisphere, they have this remarkable split season where you get your players, you have a competition, the competition ends, they go off and play international rugby, the competition ends, you get them back, and it's like, oh yeah, when you put it like that, it makes a lot of sense.
I mean, look, we've been having that conversation, you and I in particular, actually, Ger. We kind of like a lot of the regular season in the NFL. The idea that there is a season for it, and that you tend not to turn the players into commodities, because that's part of what happens if you're playing for 48 or 49 weeks of the season. Also, I think when you look at rugby, and these are the conversations that we had in State of the Union, which we're definitely going to have again, is the viability of the game, the ability to be able to pay players for that period of time. It's almost unsustainable. That's why there's a new competition every 2 or 3 years. They're trying to concertina more games in, whereas my own view is less games is probably better, less number of players, less subs in the field. For me, less is an awful lot better of what's happening. So I think we're seeing the game being consolidated an awful lot more at the present moment in time, partly because money is coming into it. They want to maximize their return, but they also want to maximize the product. And I'm wondering whether their view of it is that less may be more. It may be in line with what I think anyway, but they're trying to play for the amount of times and the amount of tournaments. It's too fragmented. It gets set into too many different TV stations. So you're having to buy 3 or 4 different types of subscriptions to be able to watch the game that you want to watch. And I think it's a mess at the moment, but I do feel it's on the right path to tidy itself up. And I still say this time and time again, but rugby is a very young professional sport. People are trying to make decisions for the information that they have at any one moment in time. And I think some decisions have been very poor, some have been very good. So it's actually, there's one nice piece of news came out in the last week or so, was that the Lions was definitely going to have its place in 4 years' time. It wasn't going to be fighting for its position in the calendar. It was going to be considered to be central to what rugby was. And for me, that's an important element, and that's kind of one summer ticked off.
The Rainbow Cup was something that obviously came in for a huge amount of criticism because of the way that it ended up being played out. And fair enough, right? It's not anything like what it was supposed to be, or what it would have been under the circumstances if COVID hadn't happened. And yet, in the midst of it, the games have actually been really good. The players have been battering each other, and clearly into the results and the outcomes. I even caught some of the end of one of the South African games, which was brilliant, won by like an 87th minute penalty. And it's like, these local matches, familiarity breeds contempt between the players. That's the type of thing supporters can get behind. The local conferences in a bigger tournament, it's an idea that clearly works really well in American sports, and it's the type of thing that could allow these leagues to interact with each other in a meaningful way.
Well, look, I think if we go back 12 months or so when we started having a lot of these conversations, it was a recognition in terms of sustainability for environmental reasons, that you shouldn't be flying all the way around the world all the time. You shouldn't be bringing, that's that for the environment itself. It can be difficult for the players having to travel 5,000 or 6,000 miles to play a game, and to come back again is really hard on the body. But sport is built around rivalries. It's built about players playing incredibly well, having an edge, not predetermined winners all the time, some sense of fairness, some sense of the haves and the have-nots, and how you can have somebody coming from behind the scenes and finally getting a championship like Connacht did a few years ago, unlikely winners, but lauded for the fact that they were, and in the style that they did it. So those things can happen, but it's all built around big rivalries. And I think some of the criticism for the Rainbow, it was a mishmash of a competition that was put in, trying to deal with circumstances beyond anybody's control. There's two elements I think that have worked really well for this, is that there's a lot of guys that are playing in the Pro 14 that wanted to get picked on a Lions tour and then want to have a high level of form going in the Lions tour. And there's that great rivalry. And on the other side, you have the South Africans who have not played a huge amount of high level rugby, are really keen to get rugby under their belt because of a Lions tour, you know. And so in many respects, it's worked out pretty well. It was still hard to get a high sense of energy into supporting something that will be here for now and will be gone soon after. Having said all that, some of the games have been of great quality, and I thought the Connacht result against Munster proved that Munster took things a little bit lightly. You know, their attitude was a bit off for the game, and Connacht ate them alive, you know, and like that was it's a great performance, because you have to turn up fully for every single game. And it was hard for us to think of that, looking at it from the outset and saying some players were going to rest lots of players, bring a lot of young guys through. I think those things have happened, and I still think the performance has been very good.
In terms of the format, though, is there something there that we can learn and apply? You obviously floated the idea of a Lions League, where essentially the Premiership and the Pro 14/16 or whatever it's going to be would actually merge. What's your view on what the most likely, and actually not skip most likely, what's the best thing? What would be the best thing in your view in terms of the local domestic league that we play in?
Well, look, for me, the best thing is a Lions League, because I think it uses the markets very, very well. It can build up high levels of rivalry. And one of the great things for the European Cup, the Heineken Cup, has been that the rivalry that has started to build up on those European big days have led to huge rugby days and huge rivalries. And like we're talking about days when we're not getting many people into the ground, but we want to fill our stadia all the time, and they are not filling for the Pro 14. There's a level of inertia around it, that a lot of the games aren't being treated as seriously as possibly. So I think the number of games needs to be cut fairly radically during the year. I think as it stands at the moment, the season is far too long, and not enough games of high enough quality for the teams to excel as much as they can. And it doesn't mean getting rid of the Pro 14 and having another competition entirely in its place. I just think you need to get rid of 4 or 6 weekends a year and try and get a bit of quality there. Get your squads a little bit smaller too, and see what can happen. But for me, a Lions League works for, you get the best of the countries on these islands. And look, I know Benetton are kind of riding high in the Rainbow Cup at the moment, but I don't think it can be fair to say that the Italian teams have done well in the Pro 14 and have offered a huge amount towards it. And I think it's a geographical anomaly anyway where they are. But now that's what I think should happen. There should be a Lions League of huge parts of rivalry, of national competitions in the midst of it, combined in whatever conference system that you put together. Do I think that's likely? I think it may even be more likely now than it was, but I think it could be 3 or 4 years away. I think it gets to the idea of what the commercial arrangements are and how those contracts get merged over time. And that's one of the things I would say that CVC may have brought closer, because of owning different parts of different competitions. I think it may mean that they can get the most out of all of them.
Keith, could I just ask you about maybe what the view from World Rugby might hypothetically be in this scenario? So, like you're talking about the Italian teams there who haven't been amazing, even at international level in Six Nations, they've been poor for a long time, and there is this constant debate at the end of every Six Nations campaign about whether or not Italy should be in the competition in the long term. I wonder what World Rugby think about the sort of promotion of the game in less developed countries. As you say, it's a very young professional sport, and how that tallies to maybe future moves towards a Lions League or to getting the big teams playing each other more and more often?
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the issues within the game, and there's a big drive. So World Rugby's drive has been consistently to try and bring rugby to wider parts of the world, and knowing how commercially difficult that is. But for me, I think you want the teams that offer a huge amount of players into the system. I think Fiji, Tonga, Samoa are some of the best players in the world are being drafted into other countries for that reason. And I think it's very important that they get brought up. I think that Japan has to be brought far more to the top table than it is, because they offer something that's really big and really interesting. But these are countries that have a history of the sport. They've always had a history of the sport. Rugby, in its drive to be more global, in my view, makes it a bit more difficult. And I know that that's an unpopular opinion, but rugby is a complicated sport. It's not easy to pick up at 18, 19, 20 years of age. It's something you need to play for far longer. Sevens, however, is far less complicated and easier to pick up. And that's where, for me, the growth of the game needs to be, through that in the women's game. But trying to think that everybody around the world can get the structures in place to go and play rugby, for me, is a flaw. It's like, for me, football is a simple game. It's very easy to play, very easy to coach. Not easy to coach very well or play very well, but it's a very easily understandable game. Rugby is still incredibly complicated, and the laws of the game are incredibly complicated. And you know they are, because referees argue about them, players argue about them all the time.
Yeah.
It isn't black and white. And so I think for the drive to make the game bigger and wider could do the opposite. It could dilute the game, because it's an awful lot of it's very, very good. And I think we kind of say, well, it's not being very fair. I'm not sure that it is very fair, but I also think that that's the reality.
One last question on this before we go on this, because this is one of the things we need to talk about. The notion of a split season. Are you, as a traditionalist, wedded to the games starting on Valentine's weekend and finishing on St. Patrick's weekend? Or actually, if those games happened in April and May at the end of the season in the Six Nations, would they be a better spectacle? Would that be good for the sport? What's your view?
I was always wedded to it. But I think everybody has to accept that there may be some part of change. I think it fits into a huge amount of the cultural significance of the game. If it was a little bit later, would that make a huge difference or not? I think if you hold one competition out for what it is in itself and its time, I think you lose the sense of it. So the rest of the season would have to make sense for that to be the case. And it then still goes down to that level of viability. And the one thing we've skirted around here is that in France and in England, in particular, France, England and Japan, owners own the teams, not the unions. And so that level of control is the one that is at the most, the hottest point of conflict over how you can restructure the season. So I think there's an awful lot more needs to be brought to the table. And if there's any route that you can tidy that up, where the professional game in those countries are run separately to the amateur game, maybe. Look, I actually think you have to put everything up in the air and see what happens, and see if it can fall, because at the moment, the constant conflict and the constant pushing and pulling of players doesn't do the game a service at all.
The last thing we wanted to ask you about was O'Gara was on Monday night talking with Joe about Will Skelton's fitness, and he said, look, he lost the head with him, and it was not a calm debate. It was one of those moments where he felt if the team was going to achieve what it was capable of achieving, that harsh words needed to be spoken. And I just wondered, like, do forwards take kindly to being told they need to shift a bit of weight?
Are you looking at me in particular for that one? I think you look, for me, I listened to that article or that conversation that you had with Raj. If he's the coach and he thinks the guy is too big, he's too big. That's it, and that's what he's there for. That's the coach. And you know what? You either complain about it. What do you do? Get bigger. Don't put the effort in and be found out to have been not as fit enough, or not pushing yourself hard enough, or not being efficient enough for the team. What you want to do is get better. Nobody likes to be dressed down in public. There's nobody anywhere likes that to happen. And Raj said he lost it. He wasn't in control of it. Now Raj is well able to lose control. So, but that was something that meant a lot to him at that stage, to be able to say it. Now, if Skelton had reacted badly, that could have reflected badly on Raj, but he didn't. And that for me is a mark of respect, even at the very start of his career with La Rochelle, that the players had for him, that they said, oh my God, I'm getting a bollocking from this little out half, and Skelton's a giant of a man. And he said, well, I'd like to be better. Players want to be better all the time. I think you'd rather get the bollocking than being patted on the back and said, yeah, you're fine, you're okay. Guys want to get better.
We know that life has changed from the old school hairdryer treatment that Ferguson would have dished out famously in the Manchester United changing room. We know that people are less capable of taking that. People are less inclined to give that, because the world has definitely moved on. And yet there's always going to be room in a professional sports environment where the outcome decides bonuses and jobs and contracts and money, and it is a competitive business. It's baked into the actual day-to-day. It's not like a normal work environment. There's always going to be that tension between what you can and can't say, and finding that line in any coach's journey is hugely important.
Well, look, you need to be very good technically as a coach. You need to understand the ins and outs of huge amounts of it, and to be able to rely on other technical coaches. But you also need to understand human nature, and you need to be able to understand each individual as an individual and what makes them tick. That's part of coaching as well. And whether he went on it by design or out of frustration, he got to what it was that Nick Skelton needed to make himself into a fitter, better player. And I think we saw the outcome of that all season. Skelton's had the best season I've seen him play rugby. He's had an impact on everything he's done. So I think you do need to get that tension, that balance between the two. Sport is an amazing business, which we never like saying, but it's one where emotion is just key to every component of it. It's the emotion that you're able to control on the field. It's the how you're able to deal with the pressure, or deal with rejection or failure, and how you're able to deal with that as a fan. It's all wrapped up into something that doesn't matter a huge amount, it matters a huge deal. So I think that's one of the great intangibles of coaching. And if you go to about the hairdryer and Alec Ferguson, he was, of his time, the most successful coach that was around, but he wasn't hairdryer every day. You know, you have to pick your moments when that happens, and it loses its effect if that's all you're doing. So you need to have different things: the arm around the shoulder. You need to have all the technical capabilities. Look, it's not simple. And look, I think we've talked a huge amount about Raj over the last period of time, and I know he's on the media, and I know he is coaching, and he's building up his coaching pedigree. I think to this point he's done an extraordinary job, and for him to fall at the hurdle is almost kind of part of the story as to what's going to happen on the next hurdles, and can he get to that level of achievement. So to this point, in my view, when I look at Raj, I look at the way he was as a player, which is entirely the wrong thing to do, but natural for us, and to say that he failed often at the start and succeeded often at the end. And I thought he was a better player for it at the end, and he could be a better coach for this at the end as well. Who
had the ability to brandish the hairdryer more than anybody else in Irish rugby during your playing days?
In Irish rugby, we didn't have too many. I mean, I did myself, but, you know, for fair. And I definitely did it too much. And I don't have any objection criticizing myself for that fact. And you're trying to learn these things all the time. But I felt in the absence of any voice or consistent voice, you needed a voice that was there. And I'm saying that after the fact, but I felt it at the time, but I got it wrong often. The one I liked was the sort of almost the veiled threat voice. And if I would say Jim Telfer for me, and that was Lions, and he was wonderful. So there was a fear of letting him down, which was something, but that wasn't a weight. There was something important in that, but he had the right thing said at the right time. Within Ireland, we had Gatland at different times was good with the arm around the shoulder, was good with the bollocking was needed. Eddie was as well at different times. And again, it's trying to figure out how they deal with all the players, because coaches play favourites and that gets seen through as well, and that can destabilise at different times too. And we didn't have a huge amount of hairdryer, apart from myself, I suppose.
All right. Keith, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Brilliant. Cheers, lads.
Keith Wood's mini State of the Union there for you this morning here on OTB AM. It's 8:40. I want to tell you about a brilliant show that we've got lined up for you tomorrow. It's at 5:30, and it's Nathan joined by an array of stars from the footballing world, Manchester City and Chelsea legend Sean Wright-Phillips, Man United hero Teddy Sheringham, talking about that night in Barcelona. We'll get the thoughts of the Republic of Ireland's two-time MVP winner Denise O'Sullivan. It's a very special remote roadshow tomorrow, Thursday the 27th of May, talking all things UEFA Champions League final and previewing the game and the road that led us there. But you've got to register for tickets, and you can do that on otbsports.com/events. Now, we are, as I said, 8:40 this morning. Time to join John Duggan. John, good morning to you.
Sharon Owen, how are you doing?
Very well. What's going on?
Yeah, well, it's all about the omens with Man United, isn't it, tonight? The 26th of May, which was the date that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer scored in Barcelona to win the Champions League back in 1999. It's the day of Sir Matt Busby's birthday. They play Villarreal in that Europa League decider this evening at 8 o'clock. Kick-off in Gdansk in Poland. No Harry Maguire, got an ankle ligament injury. So will they do it against the specialist in the Europa League, Unai Emery? 3 titles with Seville in successive years, and they've finished 7th in La Liga. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with United and Villarreal this evening. Cavani, will he be a match winner? And I think United need to win this. I think it's a big week for Ole and a big week for Pep in terms of winning trophies this week in the 2 European finals. Calls for clarification over the issue of close contacts in GA around COVID-19. Clare GA backing their manager Brian Lowen over his claims 2 of his players were named as close contacts by the Wexford players. Wexford have denied this, referred the matter to the GA's management committee. Michael Foley was very good in it last night. It's important to have clarification on what is a close contact, because we would have felt that GA players were casual contacts, given that transmission of COVID is generally seen as negligible outdoors. And why were these 2 Clare players deemed to be close contacts? That's something we would like to get to the bottom of. And also this morning, one of the biggest Japanese newspapers, the liberal Asahi Shimbun, an official Olympic partner, has called on the Games to be cancelled. It's got a circulation of 5 million. We have got, 4% of the Japanese people vaccinated, a very low number with 58 days to go to the Games, and over 80% in polls against it. But the IOC adamant that it will happen. There's obviously increasing disquiet over what's mooted to happen in Japan, given they're continuously in a state of emergency there. So that will run and run, I think. Will we have an Olympic Games at all?
It's very hard to know, isn't it? I mean, if all of the people going there are vaccinated, if Pfizer do around the rest of the world what they're doing in Ireland, will that assuage some fears? Is it the fear of the people coming? Is it the fear that this is a waste of time and money and effort when the country is in the situation that it's in? Like, is there a solution that's obvious?
No, I don't think there is an obvious solution. I think that the Prime Minister, I think they're hiding a little bit behind the IOC on this, the Japanese. And I think that everything about it, there's 2 things here. The amount of money that they've sunk into the whole thing and the money they're on the hook for. The IOC themselves know that this is their only real big earner. They've got the Winter Olympics as well, but there's a big geopolitical element to it. And also the fact that the Japanese traditionally don't want to lose face. So they want to ensure that they can't be portraying to the world that this has failed. And because if it can't happen now, it will never happen. And it's funny that Tokyo was cancelled in 1940 as well when the World War was on. Owen, you want to come in there?
Yeah, sorry, John. There's like good stuff being written over the last couple of days, kind of like digging into the political aspect of this, that obviously there will be ramifications when the voters go to the polls again at the next election in Japan, what this will actually do, because the public outcry is so one-sided at this point. Like, you've got petitions with millions of signatories, you've got billionaires coming out. The billionaire founder of SoftBank criticised the push to hold the Olympics. This is from the Irish Times over the weekend. And then you've got the Rakuten founder and CEO who's compared the Olympics to a suicide mission. So you've got the money talking, the people with the money talking, you've got the voters talking. This is a country that on the ground does not want athletes coming into the country. And as you say, Ger, is it the kind of the classic element of the Olympics not being worth it, or is it COVID? It's very much COVID. They're very worried about the new variants and people coming into the country at this point. And maybe there is some skepticism that actually, even if they're fully vaccinated, can they still pass on the disease when they get to the country, or a new variant when they get to the country? I'm sure that's a serious concern with those people, those millions of people who have voiced their concerns either through petitions or online or even just on the street in protests at the moment in Tokyo.
This is not the Australian Open. This is 12,000 people.
Yeah, and look, when we were in Japan for the Rugby World Cup, the Rugby World Cup was this kind of little blip on the Japanese public's consciousness. Already, all of the ads, a year out as it was supposed to be, on all of the billboards, everything was Olympic focused. So it was a big deal. There's been a big push, and it's been talking about it a long time. So, look, as you said, the story will run and run. We keep a very close eye on it. What else is going on, John?
Well, we're going to do virtual insanity, I suppose. I've missed a few cuts now in a row, so I feel like I'm a little bit out of form. I'll have to have a Padraig Harrington or a Shane Lowry performance, I think, in the next few weeks, or a Phil Mickelson performance, and be maybe as fortunate as that man in the United States who had $1,000 at 300 to 1 with DraftKings and made 300 grand. On Phil Mickelson, who was between 200 and 300 to 1 last week.
I think
he was actually fine.
You need to be some kind of degenerate to have a grand on Phil Mickelson, though, right? Like, seriously, no one's...
Yeah.
That's not the only bet that man made.
Yeah, and you probably have to have a lot of capital and a lot of money in the first place to be doing that. So that's probably like a pocket change for some billionaire or squillionaire
maybe
who had that money on Phil Mickelson.
So what's your strategy at the moment?
Do the obvious. Try and get some confidence back. Look, it's not a disaster. I'm down a lot less than you'd be spending on pints and cigarettes between January and May. So we're down a little bit, but it can change. Like a couple of wins, I could be back up again. So Colin Morikawa is the headline tip this week for 3 each way at the Colonial Tournament, the Charles Schwab Challenge, 14 to 1. No brainer for me. Lost in a playoff last year. Best iron player on tour. Knows how to close, won the WGC event back in February at the Workday Championship, and was 8th at the PGA last week. Colin Morikawa, no-brainer for somebody who's so good at tee to green. So he's the headline tip for 3 each way 14s. All of these are on otbsports.com. Will Zalatoris has yet to win 25 to 1 for 2 each way, making his debut here, but he is from Texas. I'm sure he's played Colonial before. His irons are razor sharp, only second behind Morikawa on the stats, and he was 8th again at the PGA last week. Number 3, Emiliano Grillo, who we tipped last week, will keep the faith in him at 45 to 1 for 2 each way, has professed before to love this course, and he was 3rd in the event back in 2018, finished the PGA with a 70. Grillo, the Argentine, 2 each way 45s. Doc Redman, we can't leave him out after we did, and he finished 9th at the Byron Nelson. 3 top 10s on tour this season, an excellent ball striker, back into form, 125 to 1 for a Euro each way. A Euro each way and Andrew Putnam at 200s. I like this guy. Came out of nowhere to finish in a tie for 3rd in 2019 in this event. Once again, loves the course. 3 top 10s this season in Phoenix, Puerto Rico and Bay Hill. Has won on the tour before the Barracuda Championships. So he knows how to close Andrew Putnam. A horse for a course at 200 to 1 for a Euro each way. And a Euro each way as well on Rafa Cabarabello of Spain, who was 23rd on his debut in this last year, 21st at the Byron Nelson. Good player, accurate off the tee, can put as well. 3-time winner on the European Tour and might contend. So Cabarabello, Putnam, Redman, Grillo, Zalatoris, and the headline tip is Morikawa.
All right. Virtual Insanity this week, John. Good stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, lads.
Best of luck with it. That's John Duggan every Wednesday with us on talking about Virtual Insanity. You can get that on otbsports.com and on the OTB Sports app, which is, of course, the best place to subscribe to all our podcasts and to get them first. I did want to tell you, sorry, about the tickets for our Euro special. So it's our live Pepsi Roadshow on Thursday, the 27th of May. That's tomorrow. It kicks off at 5:30. You need to register in advance to avoid missing out, and it will kick off at 5:30 sharp. So get online at 5:20 and you can join the last few people who are going to have tickets available to that roadshow to see Sean Wright-Phillips and Teddy Sheringham and much more as well. That's tomorrow at 5:30. Now, what time are we at here? It's 10 to 8, 8:50. It is time for us to do our second Euros cheat sheet today. It's Ukraine.
10 to 9 in case you thought you were up an hour early this morning. Let's move it on. Let's start at 90-second timer. Ukraine, or known by your dad as the Ukraine, were incredibly good in qualification. They topped the group, including Portugal, Serbia and Luxembourg. Luxembourg with that one Champions League player. They went unbeaten against Portugal, Serbia and Luxembourg. At Euro 2016, Ukraine finished bottom of their group, and Andriy Shevchenko was brought in to channel his inner Valery Lobanovsky to try and take Ukraine out of their slump. He failed, and there were widespread calls for his head after he couldn't make it to the 2018 World Cup. But Ukraine kept their faith in him, and look at them now. They've taken the handbrake off since that 2018 qualification campaign, and while Shevchenko has tried a number of formations, 4-3-3 seems to be his game plan of choice. Now, one of the players who has thrived in this setup has been Alexander Zinchenko of Manchester City, who we've mostly seen as a fullback in the Premier League, but has been used as a midfielder to brilliant effect for Ukraine. He is one of a few players from Europe's top leagues in this Ukraine squad, but mainly it is players that are based at home. Of the 35 players in the provisional squad, 23 of them play for either Shakhtar Donetsk or Dynamo Kiev. Now, things obviously have been pretty turbulent politically in the country over the last half a decade or more, and football has not been immune to it. Take Yaroslav Rakitsky, for example. He clocked up over 50 appearances for Ukraine, but was never picked again after moving to Zenit St. Petersburg in 2019. Let's have a look at their kit. Finally, their home kit is where we start. I personally needed laser eye surgery after looking at that straight into my eyeballs last night, like burning sodium right in front of your eyes. And then this is the away kit. Less a slim fit from Joma there and more of a chest burster, I think it's fair to say.
The logo is like a kid's animal toy from a cartoon. See it? See the eyes and the nose? The nose, the football and the eyes. See it? And the ears? Is it supposed to be?
I'm not sure what it's supposed to be.
Somebody's going to... It's like the weird thing that they don't actually speak. What is that kid's cartoon?
So you think the Ukraine crest is based on a television show geared towards children?
Yeah, it's like the type of thing you'd see in a dark YouTube channel.
Right, okay. Our jersey content does tend to take strange turns. There's a nice pattern on that jersey as well for people who haven't picked up on it automatically. But that is your cheat sheet on Ukraine. I'll go through the forum while Jer is looking through. I don't know. What are you Googling right now out of interest?
Kids, cartoons, Netflix.
And do you think they'll just come up with that? Maybe if you Google Ukraine crest as well, it'll come up as well, since you're so convinced that it actually is based on that. Ukraine's form. So basically, since qualification, this incredible qualification campaign that they put together, they actually ended up getting relegated in the League of Nations. Why do I keep calling it the League of Nations? The Nations League. It was a group of death, though. Spain, Germany, Switzerland were in the group. They did beat Spain and Kiev in that group. They've drawn every game, 1-1 then in World Cup qualification. They've played France, Finland, Belarus, and then they played Bahrain in a friendly on Sunday night. And the result in that one also happened to be 1-1. How are you getting on there?
Nearly.
Okay, I'll go through some of the key players while Jer continues to Google. So let's start with the attack, as we pretty much do with all these teams because it's way sexier than the defence. Roman Yaremchuk. This is the guy who led Ukraine in qualification goal scoring. He only scored 4 goals. Nothing sensational, but still their top scorer. Has scored 17 goals in the Jupiter League in Belgium this season. He will lead the line, and he's relatively competent to do enough damage in their group. Their main attacking force, creatively, is Atalanta's attacking midfielder Ruslan Malinovsky, who will create everything. He's got 8 goals, 12 assists in Serie A this season. He can actually play right in front of the defence as well as right behind the attack, so he'll be all over the place. And then a name that's probably as recognisable as any Ukrainian player to Premier League viewers is Andriy Yarmolenko, who has struggled for fitness with West Ham this season. Another player who got COVID. West Ham obviously had a brilliant season, but Yarmolenko was in and out throughout the year. He's actually Ukraine's second top scorer of all time and only 10 goals behind Andriy Shevchenko. So he'll have that target in mind and will likely play on the right of the front three. This is a really good team, Ukraine. Their defence is solid as well. Matvienko of Shakhtar Donetsk will be their mainstay at centre-back. And Andriy Pyatov, who has played forever, it seems, will continue in goals, despite the fact that they've got Andriy Lunin, who is on Real Madrid's books, who is a wonder kid in the goalkeeping stakes. It looks like Pyatov, who is 37 this summer, will continue in goals. And I bought Ger Gilroy enough time to tell us, what is the crest?
Bing Bunny.
Bing Bunny.
Yeah.
What the hell is Bing, B-I-N-G?
Yeah, Bing Bunny.
Bing Bunny, it sounds like a terrible...
It's Bing is the name of the cartoon, and the star is a bunny, and the crest is the same. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, the Bing Bunny, the Ukrainian mascot. I'm looking at it here. Yeah, I mean, it's wow. I mean, the likeness really couldn't be more.
I mean, you don't see it?
Bing,
maybe I've got some. I think it's there.
You are experiencing some sort of trip this morning to be able to see the crest of a jersey turning into an actual rabbit in front of your eyes.
Microdosing on football.
Wow, the Ukrainian football team does weird things to a man. The Bing Bunny crest.
But that crest is weird.
It is weird. I'm not denying that at all.
There's definitely look, I can see eyes and a nose and ears. Can you not?
Like when you put it that way.
Look, it's like fairly obvious.
Can we get the jersey back up, if possible? Like, can we see the eyes? I can see what you mean. Like, there's a football in the middle. That's your nose. Got your nose.
The cheeks are the two things, and then the eyes actually on the other jersey. The eyes are kind of yellow, and the ears are pretty clear, and it's got a mohawk in the middle. Right? 100%. That's like based on some kind of animal.
Yeah, like I mean, it's uncanny, really. Now that you put it that way, that mohawk really does look like Bing Bunny's mohawk.
Does Bing Bunny have a mohawk?
He does. I'm looking at it right here.
Yeah,
he
so
does.
There
he is.
Look, come on. Come on. I'm not the only one, am I? Am I?
Yes. Wow. Oh my
Come
God.
on.
Now that you put them side by side. Wow. Jesus, they are identical.
Look, we've questioned the quality of journalism that have gone into this slot already with the.
You're diluting our content, sure. That's what you're doing.
I'm not. I'm just bringing the big guns of like journalistic experience to bear. Bing Bunny, Ukraine crest. I'm telling you, there's some marketing thing going on there, some kind of subtle nonsense, some kind of influencing the children to support Ukraine. Pied Piper stuff, next level.
Bing Bunny learns about the world around him by exploring and making the most of everyday situation. He experiences the joys of swings, playing with blocks, and watching fireworks. That is the MO of Bing Bunny, according to Wikipedia.
Andriy Shevchenko could get a bit of that, couldn't he?
Yeah. Well, hey, there we go.
What is your? You're talking this team up. You do a little bit of this, I've noticed, Eoin. You talk the team up, and then you're like, yeah, not getting out of the group. But this team, by the sounds of it now, you're telling me they're getting out of the group.
They will get out of the group. Tomorrow's Euros cheat sheets, which I'm sure you're buzzing for, is Austria and North Macedonia. So please contain yourselves with the excitement for those two teams. They are the other two teams in this group. And but into the fact that they've been also really good at times under Shevchenko, they will finish second in this group. They will then, though, lose to Italy in the round of 16.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're back talking to Royal Blood.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Allison scored! Unbelievable! The goalkeeper has scored!
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed over the last week.
Would he be better at Manchester United than Solskjaer?
Well, I'm only giving you my opinion. I believe so, yes.
And he picked the ball up and threw it. Now, I didn't see the first one. David Kemp, who's my assistant, came over to me and just said, Tone, have you seen how Rory throws this ball?
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great Right, you can put the dinner on, so.
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Nearly 9 o'clock this morning here on OTB AM. Some comments to get to you. I hope Pogba scores a hat-trick tonight and some club pays the hat-trick tax for him. And Manchester United get someone like Pedro Neto on the left, plus a defender. Any thoughts on that?
So, yeah, like
United fans want to sell Pogba. They want to cash in. That's what Shifty Lad wants.
Yeah, no, it's just more the Neto suggestion, which is an interesting one. Like, does he go on to move to a bigger club this summer? Like, he's been good for Wolves all season long, and maybe Wolves are going to start going in the wrong direction now over the next little while. But like, it comes back to this question that we kind of put to Daniel Harris earlier on. Like, fitting all these pieces into the jigsaw next season could be tough, but maybe Neto comes in and does. I know it's a very easy comparison to make because he's also a former Wolves diminutive winger in Diogo Jota, but maybe it is kind of like Jota, where the player does settle for 25 games a season, gets meaningful game time when the fixtures pile up, and they will for Manchester United next season, and just contributes massively on that front.
Well, at the start of the season, if we told you that Manchester City no longer had Raheem Sterling in their starting 11, you wouldn't really have believed it, would you? Maybe before lockdown.
No.
It's like, oh, Sterling's career is about to hit the skids. You need a bunch of players to be consistently competitive at the top of the Premier League and reaching the latter stages of the Champions League. And they come in fits and starts. Like, it's possible Sterling starts next season on fire as a kick in the ass for what's happened. It's possible Mahrez eases off a bit. It's possible they both hit new levels next season. Like, if you're Manchester United, you want as many of those good players available as possible, because several of them are going to have dips in form and setbacks and injuries. So, but I think that if they could get rid of Pogba, it would allow them to build a consistent plan around what that team is supposed to be doing.
He is almost defying the ointment for this team with his versatility, with this constant question marks about where do you play him and who does he play with. That kind of, I guess, does stymie Solskjaer when he's trying to figure out what exactly their identity is and how they take on the teams who are lower than them in the league and how they take on the teams who are higher than them in the league, and they should have a clear game plan for both of those. And maybe with Pogba in the team, it's just different to when he's out of it, and perhaps that just holds the whole thing back. But maybe there's a case to be made that he is still like the joker in the pack, and that when he does line up against a Manchester City, for example, that there is a sort of, what do we do with this guy from the opposition standpoint, that there can be a bit of a beauty to that as well when the opponent doesn't really know what your best team is or what is the best position for one of your star players.
Yeah, maybe if you felt like Solskjaer had an overarching philosophy and Pogba fitted it perfectly, you go, right, this is the perfect marriage of opportunity and coaching, but it doesn't feel that way at the moment. If Manchester United lose tonight, asks Hazy provocatively, should Solskjaer get the chop, given Mourinho won it and have more points when finishing second?
That would be quite something, wouldn't it, if the Glazers turned around and were like, all of a sudden, no, you ain't for us. I would be astonished if that happened. I think that there's been progress under Solskjaer this season, and I think he's actually done a really good job, even though back at Christmas I wasn't necessarily convinced about him. I think even though the title challenge fell away in January, I still think that there's been enough of a step forward, and enough of a step forward from the manager's point of view to definitely keep him regardless of what happens tonight.
And bear in mind, more than likely the person making that decision is going to be Richard Arnold, the new chief executive, who is replacing Ed Woodward, who obviously was the liaison between the Glazers and the decision making. It never felt like the Glazers were making those decisions around managers, that it would have been actually Woodward who was doing it, because he certainly talked like he was involved in transfers and talked, remember that Schweinsteiger clip, like it was him making those calls. So I can't see a new CEO who's part of the club hierarchy already coming in and immediately saying, no, we need to get rid of the current manager, because, you know, there will be enough on his plate. Robert says Manchester United were missing one player and got trounced by a Liverpool team who've been way below their best this season. No way they'll challenge for the league next year. That's the nagging truth here, isn't it?
I think Liverpool have a better chance of challenging for the league next year than Manchester United. And maybe it's reading too much into that game a couple of weeks ago.
I don't think it is. If it's one game, it's one game, but it's over the whole season. When there was an opportunity for them to push on, they couldn't push on because they didn't have it.
Yeah, and that's it. It's not as if there was this massive collapse. like Manchester United still are lacking, and there is no guarantee that they will make that gap up next season, even if they absolutely exercise the sum of their parts next year. It still maybe falls short of Manchester City if they hit this season's form, even on a more consistent level, and if Liverpool get back to the level from 2 seasons ago and the season before that. Like, City and Liverpool have shown a level over the past 3 years that is on a level above what Manchester United have reached, even at their best at times this season. So Manchester United absolutely need to nail this transfer market. I think that is the caveat for all these conversations. I think we're just expecting them to do that. We're expecting them to spend big and win this transfer window, so to speak. So it is all based on that they improve this squad. But right now, you'd have to say that Liverpool, if they hit form and their stride early next season, are going to challenge.
Let me briefly make the case for Manchester United to challenge next year on the basis of what happened this year. Rashford had a slight dip in form for a period of time. Cavani was injured and took ages to get going, but when he did get going, it was absolutely sensational. Greenwood obviously had his off-the-field difficulties where there was tragedy in his life and has come good over the last while. So if those three stay fit for next season, the attacking flair and threat that they possess is as good as any other team in the Premier League, and those three could all score 20 goals next season each, and all of a sudden that's a transformative moment for the club. That's the basis of it. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility. And in that instance, if you're adding in Jadon Sancho to the attacking threat and these other young players start to come through, that's not saying that Martial leaves or doesn't come back and have some influence. At that point, could you see them consistently over the course of the next 12 months challenging for the title?
No, because what you've said there, if you just take that in isolation and that's all that changes, I don't think so. I think that if you talk about a transformative moment in the path of teams that have won Premier League titles over the last little while, the transformative moments for Liverpool were Virgil van Dijk and Alisson coming into the club. The transformative moment for Manchester City this season was Ruben Dias coming into the club. And I would contend that one of the big transformations under Tuchel, before things kind of went a bit wrong over the last couple of weeks at Chelsea, was that he suddenly got Antonio Rudiger, who is possibly Chelsea's most talented defender, playing well. So what will Solskjaer do with that defence to win a title next season? Because you can't win it with a defensive record that is going to be patchy. You absolutely need to be on point in that element of your team. And yes, that attacking unit is so good. And I actually don't think they need a signing in that department, as we've already discussed this morning. I think it genuinely is a brilliant attacking unit, and Greenwood has proven himself this season to have that in him to kick on to that next level. And Cavani's just been absolutely amazing. Fernandes, their best player. So they're well set in that department, but they need everything going well behind them. And I think with the current players that they have, they won't get to a Premier League title winning level behind their attack.
Man City scored 83 goals this year. If those three were to score 20 and Bruno had his regular 15, then all of a sudden you're at 75, which would be more than this they scored this season. So look, I'm just saying it's possible that that would win them a lot of games. 75 goals next season will win them a lot of games. Aaron says, I've got that bad feeling Manchester United will make things hard tonight. I think it's going to be very difficult for them tonight, especially with Lindelof and Bailly. They're just not a good enough centre-back partnership to go into games like this where you can be confident about it. And Trevor says 2-1 Manchester United. Greenwood will do the damage. Let's wait and see exactly what happens. Now, ahead of the UEFA Champions League final, Nathan Murphy is going to be joined on Thursday night by an array of stars from the footballing world. Man City and Chelsea ex-player Sean Wright-Phillips, Man United hero Teddy Sheringham, and we'll get the thoughts of the Republic of Ireland's two-time MVP winner Denise O'Sullivan. It is tomorrow, the 27th of May, talking all things UEFA Champions League final and previewing the road that led us there. Tickets are free, but you've got to register for this event. It's an exclusive live road show tomorrow, May the 27th at 5:30, and it will kick off sharp, so make sure that you've logged in well in advance to avoid missing out on the great show. It is 9:08 this morning, and it is time for us to get into our next piece. Eoin has been chatting to one half of the world's biggest rock duos.
OTB AM.
Okay, delighted to say that Ben Thatcher, drummer with Royal Blood, is with us. Their new album, Typhoons, is out now. It has gone straight to number one. Just another number one, Ben. It's every single album at this point seems to go top of the charts in the UK and in Ireland.
I know, it's incredible, and we thank all of our fans for helping us out and buying the record. Yeah, it's incredible.
I assume that for the first two albums, you're touring. When you go to number one, you're on the road, and this scenario now must be very different, where all your entire success is almost based on whether or not the album is selling, rather than seeing a live crowd right in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, it's strange not to release any music without doing shows and in stores and stuff like that, because that's normally things that help promote the record. But, you know, we've got to play by the rules here and just wait for gigs to come back and all that. Yeah, we're just kind of holding tight and trying to rehearse little bits, because we do have plans to play some shows this summer, and yeah, we just hope that it all goes through.
Could you talk us through a little bit of the collaboration that went into this album? I mean, Paul Epworth and Josh Homme obviously have been two of the names that we've seen even through social media that have been involved in the production of this album. When did that decision come? When did you make that decision, and how much of a thought was behind that?
Well, when we came off the road, we were touring with Queens of the Stone Age back in 2019, and we got to know Josh really well, and we're a massive fan of his production and his writing and his band, obviously, and him. And we thought it'd be a great idea to go in together and try and record some bits. We didn't really have anything apart from the song Boilermaker, which we had a rough sketch of, and then we had the song King and a song called Space that are on the deluxe version of the record. But yeah, we didn't really know what we were doing. We just thought we'd go and see what it was like to work with Josh, and we had just such a great time with him. We recorded it in his studio in Burbank, and we spent a couple of weeks there, and yeah, just to see how he worked and how he pushed us to do things that we wouldn't normally do, and he arranged Boilermaker in a way that we never thought of, and so yeah, that was the beginning of that, and that we kind of parked that session, and did a lot more writing, did some more touring, and yeah, kind of just working out what our next move was. And so we went into a few studios, one of them being The Church, which is Paul Epworth's studio, and just did a writing session with him there, and came out with a couple of tunes that he produced on. And then we kind of came out of that studio session still not really knowing what we wanted to do or where we wanted to record the album. And so, but we kind of had the confidence and the knowledge of doing it ourselves at this stage, and decided to self-produce. And and that's where the rest of the album came from, is another couple of studios with us kind of taking the reins.
What's the biggest thing you learned from working with someone like Josh Homme, and even touring with him, as you say, at the end of 2019?
Yeah, I mean, watching Queens is like a masterclass. They're the most insane musicians, and so talented. I guess what we learned was to be real comfortable in our own shoes, and what we did was unique because it was what it was only me and Mike doing it, and to kind of just trust ourselves a little bit more, and give ourselves a pat on the back when we were doing things that were really cool.
That's really interesting, because to me, listening to that after a couple of really successful albums, it might seem obscene that someone would maybe not believe fully in themselves. But have there been moments after album 2 where maybe you start questioning the direction or questioning certain elements of what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of we grow as human beings, and our band's music evolves with us, and so we're not wanting to go back and write another Royal Blood 1. We want to progress and try some new things and break some of the rules that we've set upon ourselves. The first couple of records were mainly just bass and drums and vocal, and then the second one had a little bit more like backing vocals, and there was a song that had keys on it. And this one, we felt like we just wanted to break those rules and venture out a bit and explore the studio and what we could do there. And Josh kind of gave us the confidence, I guess, and to use the studio as a playground and not to worry so much about playing all these different parts and just having a bit more fun with it, really.
Yeah, well, it's paid off handsomely, to say the least. I remember seeing you guys in the academy after your first album, so 2014-15 at this point in Dublin. And I think within 2-3 years, you guys had then played the 3 Arena. It was almost in Dublin terms like a great yardstick for how successful a band had gone over those few years. It is so often said about these bands that the difficult second album can be a real tricky point for a lot of bands. Was that almost as satisfying as getting over the line in the first place, the fact that you'd managed to make that step up and arrive on a higher plane almost with bigger crowds?
Yeah, I mean, the writing of the second record, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and yeah, with the success of the first one, it took us on a ride that we never expected. So we wanted to then push ourselves to go further and play bigger places and eventually become hopefully like a festival headline band. And so yeah, we're always pushing to be better and to be more creative and to put on great shows.
What is the yardstick then for this album? Is it simply, given you can't play too many live shows at the moment, is it simply album sales at the moment, or how do you measure your success?
We measure it by, I mean, we won on the day that we had finished our record, and we just had it to ourselves because we were so proud of what we had created and how far we pushed ourselves to do something that sounded like Royal Blood, but a different version of Royal Blood, and having these other elements of musicality come in together. And yeah, so we measure our success by how proud we are with what we've done. Then the rest is out of our hands, you know. The rest is down to fans and our record company and promotions team and doing things like this, interviews and magazine shoots and all of that lot, just to tell the world that we have a record coming out. And then after that, the numbers thing is down to all of that. So, but you know, I will never downplay that we're so happy to have a number one record again, and the feedback has been amazing from our fans. And yeah, it's just it's a strange feeling now because we're like, well, it's, you know, the record is at number one now. It's gonna, you know, Rag and Bowman or someone's gonna get it tomorrow or whatever, because you pass on the baton. But yeah, it's like, what next? And it's normally gigs, so we're just kind of waiting to be able to do those things.
The festival season looks like it might happen in the UK this year, right?
We've got 3 festival dates, but yeah, you've got to take every day as it comes, don't you? And who knows? We've got a lot of plans in the diary for a lot of things for the rest of the year, but yeah, just take one step at a time.
We are unbelievably jealous over here that even the chance of a festival in the UK is looking like a possibility. I'm also interested in chatting to you a little bit about football, Ben, because I'm not sure people realise. There's a lot of people in Ireland probably don't realise that you guys are sponsors of Rustington FC. Now, not a lot of people will have heard of Rustington FC. Talk to us about this.
Rustington Football Club is based in a little village where I grew up in, and there's a recreation ground at the end of my road where Rustington Football Club is based. And because I grew up there, I used to always go down and watch the games. It was like a Sunday league type game vibe. And one of the guys from the club got in touch with me asking about putting Royal Blood as the sponsor. And we made it work out, and it was just a bit of fun, really. But yeah, they have got a great kit. I have one here somewhere, but I can't see it. But it's a great kit.
Yeah, I looked it up online. It is absolutely gorgeous. Your band's font just fits perfectly. I mean, even if you lived a million miles away from this club, it was just perfect, just for the jersey alone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's it.
So this was the local Sunday League team where you were. Did you play underage football in and around Rustington at all?
I did. I was never great, but I was kind of brought up with that being the only thing to do around the village. So, and I love football. I support Brighton and Hove Albion. I go to the games. I'm actually lucky enough to go to the game against Manchester City on Wednesday, which is the first game back. Class. So I'm very excited about that. Actually, it's Tuesday, not Wednesday.
Brilliant. That's like that really is the golden ticket right there. Like when it came to Rustington, like you obviously said that they came to you, and without much thought, you're like, yeah, let's do this. And it's obviously been a subject of great conversation over the last month or so in the aftermath of the Super League, the contribution that these clubs make to every single community. Like I presume that was the case growing up, that you didn't even need the Super League to remind you of how poignant a club like that can be to the hundreds of people in the locality who go to their games and support the team.
Absolutely, yeah. It's yeah. I mean, it just took the piss a little bit, didn't it? With what football means to not only our country but the rest of the world. You know, we have such a great league, and to throw that all away for money and with no competitive motion in it is ridiculous.
Yeah, it really was. Like it's interesting as well when we think about these link-ups between football clubs and musicians. It's starting to happen a little bit more. Like I know in Dublin, Fontaine's DC and Bohemians have hooked up, and they've got a refugees welcome sign on the front of their jersey, which is just fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. And like I wonder sometimes if artists actually just have a greater appreciation of their social values and can actually contribute with the money that they do have on that level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot bands do, not only to do with football, but to do it, you know, in schools and all sorts, you know, raising money for musical equipment or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, the sponsor thing on the shirt was just a bit of fun, really, for us in the club, and it's got them a little bit of press and a little, you know, little spotlight on that club. You mean, did you ever think of talking about Rustington Football Club ever, you know, to anyone? And there's, you know, I'm talking about it right now, which is ridiculous.
How are they doing? What sort of a season are they having?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I've had a lot on my a lot of things on my table recently to sort out. So
yeah, there's been a bit of work on your plate recently, to say the least. Brighton, though, they've very much stayed up. I mean, it's been a mad season for Brighton. The XG Kings, they became known, obviously, for creating so many chances, not being able to put them away. Does that mean next season they're going to qualify for the Champions League, or how do you read that?
No, we're not going to. Hopefully, we'll end up mid-table next year, bit more secure, scoring. I mean, we've played some amazing football. We just haven't scored any goals. Or if we have, it's been a 1-0 and we're just holding on. But it's nice to have these 3 games to kind of reset a little bit and relax. But yeah, hopefully next season we can get some more points.
And for you, is the football year just getting started? Are you going to be head over heels for England once the Euros begin?
Oh yeah, can't wait for that. I mean, the Euros is just so much fun anyway, isn't it? It's like as soon as football stops, you just don't tell your girlfriend that the Euros is on, because like you're getting so buzzed about it. And then Euros is such a good time, though, isn't it? get in the sunshine, watch the games, drink some beers, watch England lose.
Yeah, well, that's like, I mean, we'll all just be hate watching England here in Ireland for the few weeks. That's going to be our, because we don't have a team of our own to support. So what's next for the band then over the next little while? I guess it's very hard to put your finger on when exactly things click into gear, but do you have loose plans?
Yeah, we've got loose plans just to play some festivals, and we're going to hopefully evolve and do some shows at some point with that. But again, we'll just have to see. At the moment, we've only got these festivals in and just a little bit of time off. But we have a studio now in Brighton where we hang out and we can go and make some more music. So we'll be keeping ourselves busy.
Nice one. Good to have that on the doorstep. Ben, congratulations on yet another unbelievable record and another great piece of success for Royal Blood. Best of luck with everything this summer, and hopefully we'll see you in Ireland again soon.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
OTB AM.
Yeah, that's you obviously enjoyed that, Eoin?
Yes, something a bit different, seeing a musician on the show this morning. Like sponsors of their local club now at this point, which is obviously very in vogue. There we have it there. Their jersey with the name on the front. This is obviously the thing to do now if you're a musician, is to get involved in a football team and sponsor it, really.
Or buy it if you're...
or buy it.
Yeah. Palstar says, love Royal Blood. That's me for the day. Royal Blood turned up to 11.
It's a pretty good way to spend the day, to be quite honest. I'm just trying to think of all the other people who've got involved with football clubs over the last little while. It seems to have been like something that's been particularly on vogue the last few months even. Didn't Ed Sheeran, isn't he the sponsor of Ipswich Town now?
Is he?
Yeah. Obviously a bit higher up the food chain. That's like Ipswich Town that's an investment. Like that's a big thing to be involved with. Like it's kind of like, at least with the lower leagues, it's like, oh, helping the community and all that sort of thing. With Ipswich Town, it's like, oh God, there's fans at my door saying, why aren't we signing this player or that player? Why aren't we getting promotion to the championship?
Is this like Shane Lowry and Offaly? Is that the...
Shane Lowry and Offaly is the other one, of course. But we'll see what Offaly do in the transfer market. They were pretty good in the league at the weekend, actually, the Offaly hurlers, and I saw that the Offaly Twitter account came out and said, sorry, we haven't been on Twitter for a while. We don't know what to do with such levels of success because they've started so well and they've had a couple of wins in both codes so far this year. So that is a Shane Lowry effect. That is the effect of bringing a professional sports person on as your jersey sponsor. So yesterday on the show we were talking about the East Coast versus West Coast beef between Wexford and Clare, and we thought that it had kind of run its course, but it hadn't run its course. It's still going, and it's actually getting deeper and more entrenched by the day. And I mean, if it wasn't COVID related at this stage, it's getting to the point of high farce where it's possible for us to be like, lads, this is, everybody needs to... It's like one of those scenarios where we should all look away because it's got so publicly embarrassing, but actually we're getting the popcorn out and having a good gander, right? Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know what sort of... why you would look away from this. This is... At every turn there is somebody else who's willing to say something new, and it just seems that they're both quite entrenched at this point, both Clare GEA and Wexford GEA, on what actually happened here. It did seem to me that maybe Lohan had, at first when I saw the interview on RT, that maybe he had misspoke, or maybe the specifics were a little bit unclear, and that Wexford GEA angrily reacted and things were a little bit cleared up. But you could see why Brian Lohan said what he said. You could see how things could get lost in translation maybe a little bit, or the specific language was kind of important. But Clare GEA doubled down on that yesterday then with a statement that they released, completely backing up what Brian Lohan was saying. Like, for anybody who missed it, they said that the HSE designated Clare players as close contacts, which is their function and was never disputed. The issue is how they were identified as close contacts. The HSE in the Midwest region were informed by the contact tracing team in relation to the decision that was made. Brian Lohan, as manager of the Clare team, contacted the HSE locally when he was informed of the designation of two senior hurlers as close contacts. The HSE informed him that two players were identified on foot of discussions between the contact tracing team of the HSE and the Wexford players involved, who were positive cases. So the HSE, this is continuing from the statement, the HSE did confirm that one of the players was identified not by his name, but by the colour of his helmet. But by who? by one of the positive cases.
Right, so somebody from Wexford said, I was marking a lad with an X-coloured helmet. Let's say, because it's Brian Lohan, just for the sake of shorthand, that I was marking a lad with the red helmet, and then the HSE went off and identified that person.
It seems to be that way.
Right.
Like I've not,
so there's plausible deniability from everybody, right? For as far as Clare are concerned, somebody in Wexford did identify somebody on the Clare panel. As far as Wexford are concerned, they didn't identify an individual per se. There was no names given. No name was given. No one was single. What was Micheál Martin's exact line the previous day? You know, it's really like the row is essentially the same row as the row in Gulliver's Travels about which end do you open your egg. That's what this is, right? Who said what to who? The other thing that springs to mind is the wire. Don't matter who said what to who at this point. If it's a lie, we fight on that lie. They're just fighting on stuff. They're just fighting for the sake of fighting now, right? Whereas the sideshow, and the most important thing, it has been a sideshow up to this point, is that, as Colm Keys, I think, was the first person I saw pointing out, if this is going to be the case, the whole system is going to fall apart. If we are now going to have close contacts on the basis of people playing matches against each other, and somebody from the HSE is going through game by game, that's not great.
So you're saying that this whole thing is actually totally reasonable. There's no need for this to be a feud and everybody's right.
Well, if they all had a conversation together and say, well, this is what the people in the HSE told me, and this is what our lads told the HSE, they'd probably find that somewhere, somewhere the whispers and the stuff has been mangled, but a little bit of information was given, as you're supposed to do. When the contact tracing people ring you, you're supposed to give as much information as you possibly can to help stop the spread. So you give as much information as you possibly can. That doesn't mean that you're naming players. I was marking that guy for 25 minutes, and like he was basically in my togs.
Yeah, they were playing a blanket defence. I mean, all 6 of them are close contacts.
You know, like that probably isn't what happened. And Clare feel rightly aggrieved that actually what's happened here is that it appears to be a change in policy where you can become a close contact from stuff that happens on the field of play. But perhaps because there is already a simmering beef between the counties, we haven't got to that point where everybody just sat and had a conversation and went, what are the repercussions for the sport more widely and for sport more widely? Like, can anybody say that, scrums, the length of time that the World Rugby have gone and they've proven that scrums are not likely to, but like obviously somebody in the HSE disagrees with this, and that might be a little bit more important for us, no?
Yeah, but if Wexford and Clare and everybody involved has a conversation about this in the aftermath and kills the story from day one, it doesn't change the fact that Clare have been dragged into this as a result of a positive case in the Wexford setup. Dragged into this is the wrong choice of words.
No, totally, you're right, they have been, yeah.
But it would suggest that they've been done deliberately on the Wexford side of things. I mean on the part of accidentally dragged into this, involuntarily dragged into this, unless someone in the HSE has been like, wait a minute, what is the scenario there with a close contact? And maybe they've looked at the scenario of a close contact and said, that will be a close contact in every walk of life, except for on the field of play together. And I mean, there's a reason why we've kind of read a lot about close contacts and casual contacts in relation to inter-county teams over the last little while. But that should be the bigger story here, that this perhaps does not bode well for future scenarios unless the HSE makes some sort of admission or makes some sort of changes to what actually happened here. But the big story is not that. The big story is that this is a political war between Clare and Wexford at this point.
And the toxicity in the air is impossible to ignore, and it's now having a material impact on all sorts of other things as well. Like I can't imagine what it's like. I just can't imagine what it's like to be a supporter of either of these counties at the moment, going, why is this war? Like, why are we at war when all anybody actually wants to do is watch the team hurl in this instance? This doesn't seem to be an issue between the Wexford footballers and the Clare footballers. So, I don't know. You can't really see anything solving the problems here in the short term about the political side of things. But then there's definitely that repercussion. And I'd say essentially the GAA are very concerned about that, because ultimately that's the type of conversation that Sport Ireland probably needs to have with the HSE and with the government. Like, I know Joe was making the point last night, Jesus, it goes very to the top, you need Paul Reid, but actually somebody in the HSE will have responsibility for saying that our public health, our stated policy is that there are no close contacts, or all of a sudden we've revisited that on the basis of some specific evidence to say you can now become a close contact from playing against somebody who has COVID. That'd be a big change, and that would put the club season in jeopardy for all sports for the rest of the year until everybody gets vaccinated, and that would be no good.
Like, it must be so frustrating if you are in that Clare panel and you've travelled to the game on your own, you've togged off in the stand, and then all of a sudden you're a close contact for marking your man.
Yeah, it'd feel a bit ridiculous, wouldn't it?
It just doesn't make sense whatsoever, and I think that's probably why Lohan comes out on Sunday night, in fairness to him. That's why he says what he says and comes out pretty angrily, because every inter-county manager has gone to incredible lengths to ensure that things are fine and that people are abiding by the rules, because there have been scenarios, like we had the case last year, obviously, with the Offaly game, and wasn't there Sligo as well, who couldn't field a team for a game because of COVID, and this has happened. Like, teams have messed up, but Clare obviously feel that they did everything perfectly and still yet are facing essentially a punishment for playing a game of hurling. It is incredible.
Right, 9:35 this morning, OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what we got on OTB Sports Radio today. You can get it by telling Alexa, play OTB Sports Radio on TuneIn or Google Home. What do you say to Google Home? Okay, Google.
Okay, Google.
Okay, Google, play OTB Sports Radio on TuneIn. And look, there she is. 1 o'clock today, OTB Gold, an Irish football special. Kevin Kilban in conversation with Shay Given. No, I didn't ask Spotify to play OTB Sports Radio on TuneIn. Something went wrong. There you go. It's try opening Spotify to continue. It's unreliable. That was going to be very embarrassing, or not? Or maybe not.
Spotify or OTB Sports Radio on your hands, I think.
It doesn't work. It didn't know the difference there on the phone. It was going to be the theme tune to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on Spotify if that opened. So would that have been, or would that be?
Yeah, do you know Donatello, the front man from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, looks very like the Ukraine crest.
I see the round nose, yeah. Right, OTB Gold, 1 o'clock. Mount Rushmore today is Derry at 3. A retro panel from Tyrone's GA's Golden Days at 4 o'clock. That's the good stuff that Eoin won't listen to. At 6, OTB Gold.
I did that panel, I think I hosted it.
To make it up for it, it's Colin Cooper at 6 tonight. We're back on air from 7 this evening with Off the Ball on OTB Sports Radio and the News Talk, OTB AM, back tomorrow morning from 7:30, reaction to the Europa League final and much more besides. See you then.
Well, there's plenty going on in GAA at the moment off the pitch. Much of it centres on Clare. Based on a county board meeting this week, it seems the much talked about winter of discontent looks set to continue. It's kept pace through the springtime, looks set to truck on into the summer. Lots of acrimony flying around. Previous to this week, Pat Fitzgerald of Clare County Board has described some of what's going on as a witch hunt. Plenty of other respected voices in Clare GAA are unhappy with aspects of how things are being done in the county, and we saw that again this week at a county board meeting. Mick Foley of the Sunday Times with us. Hi, Mick.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Yeah, very well. So reading some of the transcript of this meeting during the week, it's tetchy. There's clearly a lot of history built up, a lot of animosity. Lines in the sand are well drawn. It centres, initially anyway, on the under-20 hurlers not having food after training at the moment. And so Niall O'Connor of Aerogue, he went and raised €4,000. And you can pick it up there. Michael Gallagher, the County Board Treasurer, I guess question the motivation behind raising the money.
That's essentially it. As you say, the Clare under-20s didn't have access to meals after training at the moment. Now, according to Michael Gallagher, it would have been a kind of a standard procedure that they would have had hot meals, I think 3 weeks coming up to a championship game, 3 weeks before a championship game, that would kick in. And there would also be maybe tea and sandwiches and things like that provided after training. But these things weren't in place anyway this year. So as you say, Niall O'Connor goes. He's a member of the Aero Club. His father would also be Jerry O'Connor, who would have been involved in a managerial position with the Clare senior hurlers back before Brian Lohan. So Niall goes, raises the $4,000 to cover the meals for the under-20s, and it's greeted, it's brought up last night, and it's greeted by Michael Gallagher with a thanks and kind of appreciation for what Niall did, but there's also the question, well, what's the motivation behind doing this? Essentially, are you trying to embarrass the county board? And it goes on from there. It's, I suppose, when you look at it in the context, I suppose Niall O'Connor would also have been very much involved in the conceiving and in the putting together of a strategic review committee for Clare that's now in place, looking at ways that Clare can do their business better. It's an independent group, and that in itself initially would have caused a lot of tension, putting that group together and putting it in place. So that's kind of the background there a little bit. It's just very unfortunate, and there was requests last night from the county vice chairman Kieran Keating and others as well to withdraw the comments in relation to Niall O'Connor. Treasurer didn't take up the opportunity to withdraw them, so they're kind of left there on the record now. So it's just a very unfortunate set of events. Very unfortunate that the Treasurer would decide to have a go at a guy who went and raised a 4-figure sum to pay for some meals for an inter-county hurling team.
I'm sure local politics are tetchy in GAA right around the country, so maybe it would be wrong to classify this as unique or somehow extraordinary. But to give people a sense of how tetchy maybe it became this week, Rory Hickey, he's an Airog delegate, as is Niall O'Connor, who raised the money. He said Niall O'Connor raised more in 4 hours than the Clare County Board in the past year. So there were jabs flying both ways. Michael Gallagher's response, as you've alluded to, he said, "The first I heard about the food was when the under-20 hurling manager Sean Doyle rang me to know what the situation was in relation to food. I explained to him it'd be the same as every year. They'd get the hot meals 3 weeks before their first championship game. He said, would I look at it? I said I'd come back to him, but I got no further correspondence from the manager of the under-20 team until I saw what was going on social media. Personally, I'd like to thank Niall O'Connor for taking it on himself to raise the money. If he did raise €4,000, fair play to him. But I would have to ask you delegates, what was his motive for that? Niall O'Connor never rang me as treasurer, and we could have gone out and spoke about it. He went off on a solo run. And then he said, I don't even know what all this is about, to be honest. Is this the same Niall O'Connor that embarrassed the county board in Thurles, where his father and the manager had to go back and apologise to the Clare County Board? Is that the same Niall O'Connor we're talking about here? Niall O'Connor never rang me as treasurer. Is this the same Niall O'Connor that the county minor manager brought on as a selector, and for some reason, best known to himself, he left for no reason? This kind of stuff was flying around, and then, Conor Clancy of Kilmally says it's a bit disingenuous to call into question Niall's motives. What Niall did is to be commended, and on it went. The Éire Óg secretary, Paddy Smith, one last quote from this meeting, which sounds eventful, obviously. So he got a bit more serious and looked at the bigger picture, and I suppose this ties in with the review committee you're talking about, Mick. He said, Michael Gallagher, that's the treasurer we've just been talking about, and Pat Fitzgerald, I have the greatest of time for the two of you. I know you're under pressure. I appreciate you're doing your best, but you, as an executive, have to look at yourselves. If you were a private company, there'd be serious questions about your performance. You people at the top of Clare GAA have to examine yourselves. This has to be stopped, and the only way you'll stop this is action, and proper action. We need open debate. Last September, November, you held 2 board meetings. One lasted 35 minutes and one lasted 29 minutes. No debate. That, if a consultant was looking at you, would say there's something seriously wrong here, lads. I'm giving it to you straight today and constructively. I have no personal agenda with any of you people. I fully realise you are Clare GAA people. We need an independent assessment, and that's what this strategic review committee will bring, end quote. So there's a lot in that.
There's a lot in that.
You can unpack all that for us.
Thanks, Dylan. Sound. No, yeah, like what was said there by the Éire Óg secretary would be indicative, I suppose, of what would have been brought up at previous county board meetings over the past couple of months. There's a general sense among a certain cohort in Clare GAA that the county board would have questions to answer in relation to how they're doing their business. That's not to suggest any impropriety or anything like that, but people are upset, I think, about how things are being run. I think they're upset about particular issues specific to things, for example, like the Centre of Excellence in Caherlone, which cost £5 million. People would have looked at that, particularly over Christmas and into the New Year, and gone, where's Where's that money gone? We're not seeing it. There's problems with the pitches. There's problems with the facilities there. There are question marks over the running of the supporters club some years ago now, and whether that supporters club was run under the auspices of the county board. County board have been quite clear that it was run independently, which would run contrary to what the GA would like to see done. So there's and then you mentioned there, Pat Fitzgerald's name came up, and Pat Fitzgerald is a long-serving full-time secretary there in Clare, and there will be a sense among a lot of people that it's time for a change across the board in the executive, whether that's justified or not. There are certainly a lot of questions coming up at these county board meetings. I mean, even the last one, there was a question again about the terms of Pat Fitzgerald's contract, how long it is, salary, who's paying the salary, and so on and so forth. So it's getting very personal. There's an awful lot of, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, because a lot of what's backing up what people are talking about is correct and true, but the personal aspect is coming into it to the point that it's making the conversation toxic. I mean, in my time, I can't remember coming across or covering a situation in a county like this since the Cork strikes 20 years ago. It's gotten very personal, and sometimes when things get this personal, it's difficult for some people to see the wood for the trees, and you kind of have to, you'd like people to kind of step back and ask, well, why are we doing these jobs? Why are we here? What brought us to these posts in the first place, and try and work through it from that point, obviously for the betterment of Clare GAA, whether that's from the county executive side of things in terms of providing the clarity that a lot of delegates are looking for, and equally from the other side, the people who are having pot shots at people to say, well, look, we're not going to get anywhere having pot shots. Let's try and be constructive in our criticism and take it that way. But it's at the moment, it's at a stage where you have an incident like last night happening, where a county treasurer will have a go at somebody for doing something positive. And as you mentioned there, bring up an awful lot of backstory that really fundamentally, when you look at the issue at hand, which is the funding of meals for an under-20 team, don't really have anything to do with anything. These are conversations you don't have at a county board. This is a conversation you pick up a phone and go, why did you do that? Do you need to say something to me? Do I need to say something to you? But obviously that's not happening. It's all been played out in public, and it's not doing anybody any good. But that's not to say that action doesn't need to be taken, that clarity doesn't need to be provided, and that people deserve answers for the questions that they're asking.
And one last quick one, Mick Foley of the Sunday Times here talking to us. It's clear Pat Fitzgerald, in describing some of what's going on as a witch hunt, is not exactly open to dramatic change at executive level, and is certainly hostile to the charges being levelled at the county board. So this review committee, they've been put in place. They're independent. I think there was toing and froing over to what extent county board people might be involved in this committee for a time. I remember reading that in the Sunday Times actually a couple of weeks or months back. But that review committee is in place, and in effect, are they having a root and branch look at what's been done at county board level, and they're going to present their findings presumably?
Yeah, that's essentially it. Clare County Board obviously have other committees set up as well, finance committees and so on and so forth, that they would have to have set up. But as far as I understand it, the Strategic Review Committee have carte blanche to look at whatever they feel needs to be looked at. And that would include something, for example, I mentioned Catherlohan, again, the Centre of Excellence, which there is a Catherlohan committee in place in Clare to try and see, well, how can we actually fix the issues that are there and maximise this facility. But the Strategic Review Committee are also looking at that, an aspect of that, to see how they can help. So, yeah, it's root and branch. Their findings will be expected probably in the autumn, I think. To what degree they're getting support and assistance from the county board, you'd have to ask the Strategic Review Committee that, members of that committee. You would hope for the betterment again of Clare GAA and the people who are volunteering their time at all levels, that they're getting whatever they need, because again, it's, the people who are involved in that Strategic Review Committee, looking at the names, they're all very capable people. They all have an interest in Clare GAA, and they're doing it. I would feel that they're doing it from a good place. And whatever comes from the Strategic Review Committee, obviously it will go to the county board and the county executive and the delegates to muse on and deliberate on, and they can decide what they want to do after that. But I think it's a point, it's long past the point now in Clare where, there needs to be openness, transparency. There needs to be an understanding on all sides that it's long past time that people start putting together and trying to figuring out the best way forward for Clare GAA.
No, it's never dull down there. And that brings us to the next topic, I suppose, which again, the theme of two sides digging in continues. For people late to this story, or because it's been a lot of, it's kind of every 24 hours, it seems that the situation has changed. So in short, Wexford played Clare a couple of weeks back. Wexford then turned out had some positive COVID cases, and then 2 Clare hurlers were identified as close contacts by the HSC as a result of this match against Wexford. So Brian Lohan on Sunday, Clare manager, went in RTE, and he said, and this was after the Clare hurlers had been identified as close contacts, it was very unusual for us to hear that 2 of our players were nominated by 2 Wexford players as close contacts, particularly given one of those players only came on in the 51st minute, and he nominated one of our players. That was on Sunday. Wexford GAA responded. They weren't happy. Their chairman came out and said, in the strongest terms here, the suggestion made that members of Wexford GAA had somehow nominated Clare players as close contacts is factually incorrect. Wexford GAA have again spoken to HSC South East this morning, and this position can be independently verified by the HSC. So I thought that was, over to you, Brian Lohan, because HSC are saying, look, we can verify what Wexford are saying here. Fergal McGill, Croke Park HQ, came out and said, in this case, the decision would be with the local health authority, HSC Midwest. They would be the ones to designate close contacts. It had nothing to do with Wexford. So again, Croke Park are now in Wexford's corner. And so Clare GAA have responded this afternoon. They fully support the comments made by Brian Lohan. They say that Brian Lohan contacted the HSC. The HSC informed Brian Lohan, this is the Clare statement here, Brian Lohan, that the 2 players were identified on foot of discussions between the contact tracing team of the HSC and the Wexford players involved who were positive cases. The HSC did confirm that for one of the players they were identified not by name, but they were identified by the colour of their helmet, and this has led to 2 players having to self-isolate. Brian Lohan stands by his comments made last Sunday in relation to the incident, and there remains much disappointment and frustration in our county in relation to why the Clare players were identified, end quote. Again, Mick, you can unpack this and tell me what the truth is here. I mean, can someone get Paul Reid on the phone? This has to go right to the top.
Well, first of all, Joe, I'd like to thank you for packaging all that up for us. That was very nicely done. I was dreading to have to go through that. It's just so back and forth. I mean, you mentioned there the initial statement from Wexford being backed up by the GA, kind of like a little kind of topspin return backhand across the net, and Brian comes back, or Clare GA come back with a forehand forehand smash down the line. Yeah. What comes next? Who knows? Like again, there is 1 or 2 just bewildering things about this, and it's all around close contacts. Our understanding for quite a while now is that when you're playing any sport outdoors, close contacts don't come into it. You're marking a guy, you're not a close contact. That's not the case. We had a case in Offaly last year, you might remember, where there was like 27 or 28 players were deemed close contacts by one contact tracer after an Offaly player had been diagnosed with COVID. And they were all at training, and they were just all deemed close contacts. And that was when everything had to be outdoors.
That was deemed OTT subsequently, though, wasn't it?
Oh, it was. That's my point. I mean, there was sort of, I suppose, that was a kind of a moment of clarity as well. I said, well, okay, what does close contact mean in this scenario? It certainly doesn't mean that. So what does close contact mean? Well, the GA protocols, and they're in the Clare statement again, are, you have to be, potential close contact scenarios would be if you're in a gym or any other indoor training facility, if you're using the dressing room, at pre or post-match training meals, at a meeting, like tactical meetings, analysis meetings, game prep meetings, if you're traveling collectively to and from games or training, or if you're staying overnight somewhere. Which brings up the question, if 2 of the Wexford players had been diagnosed with COVID last week. How come all that Wexford squad hadn't been automatically deemed close contacts? Why did it take for a third case for them to be deemed close contacts, and then the Kilkenny game last week was postponed? It's due to be played Sunday now. Why were 2 Clare players randomly picked out? Well, not randomly, but why were 2 Clare players picked out, as I say, in a scenario where close contact, that's not meant to occur. It's not meant to apply on the field. As you mentioned, the GAA have essentially said, look, this is the HSE's call. The GAA don't decide who's close contacts. The HSC. Now we have these 2 slightly differing versions of how the HSC came to that conclusion. It would be nice. It would be nice if the HSC clarified precisely how this occurred. There may be privacy issues around that, though. And also, it would be probably beholden on the GAA now just to clarify again precisely the protocols around close contacts, because if it is the case that the HSC can call out guys as close contacts because the guy they were marking test positive for COVID a few days later, well, then that obviously has a huge impact going forward. As the Clare statement says, that has a huge impact on club and county activity going forward. Where it leaves us, in terms of Clare and Wexford, God only knows. And of course, we go back again to the personal thing. You have David Fitzgerald as Wexford manager, you have Brian Lohan as Clare manager. They have a history that we're all aware of. That clearly, on the surface, clearly has nothing to do with this. This is all about, to me, this comes back to the HSE designating guys close contacts who are on the field and the ramifications therein. That's the big question, really, and the most impactful question going forward for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. For all the tittle-tattle and, that's going on here, and HSE have told us X and HSE have told us Y, that is the really significant point potentially going forward, because even it was front page of the Sunday Times maybe back in March, I think, when there was a study released of the past year, I think, in effect, and experts revealed that not a single case of on-the-field transmission of COVID-19 had been confirmed in rugby union, in soccer, in rugby league or American football during a full year. And this was, fantastic news. They'd done some detailed tracing and found it was all the ancillary activities, the transport, the meetings, dressing room, etc., but nothing on the field. And Anthony Daly, even in the Irish Examiner, made the very fair point again, and the GAA and HSC, I guess, will have to figure this out pretty soon. He said, before that game 8 days ago, I saw the Wexford players gathered in a tight huddle. At the last water break, Davy Fitzgerald gathered all those players around him in a circle to issue instructions. One of the Wexford players who tested positive was in that huddle. So if the guys right beside him weren't considered close contacts, how in the name of God was the Clare fella he was marking deemed a close contact? I don't have an answer for that question.
There is an answer for that question. He's not a close contact. Wow. By all scientific knowledge that we have at this point, and as per the GAA return to play protocols, the guys on the field were not close contacts.
So is there a possibility here that in the tracing team talking to the Wexford players, it turns out that, oh yeah, listen, we're good mates and we're in the same car after the match type thing? Like that would explain it more than we were in each other's general circumference for the match.
That is the only logical explanation. And I have no idea. Number one, we don't know publicly anyway who the players involved are. We don't know. We just don't know. And as I say, it's not that we even want to know. And you hit the nail on the head there. The words tittle-tattle, right? Clear off the tittle-tattle here, And the main issue here is, okay, what do we need to redefine again what close contact means in a GA context? The HSE's definition of close contact, as you said there, it has been conclusively proven and shown that the chances of contracting COVID-19 on the field during a game from standing by a guy is practically zero. It is not a close contact scenario. It is not. So that was the bewildering bit for me. How can you pick 2 random guys out of a crowd and not have the 20 or 30 odd, however many people travel from Wexford, who stayed overnight and played the game, were in a dressing room. Remember, we can use dressing rooms now as well, which is different to last year. They were all in close proximity. How come they weren't deemed close contacts? And this isn't kind of like picking on Wexford or picking on Clare. This stuff has ramifications for every county and club going forward. And it's, we need the clarity. We just need the clarity.
Yeah.
And at a time when the HSE is dealing with ransomware issues and various different things that were probably deemed much bigger issues than this. Well, this is actually quite a big issue because the GA is a gigantic organisation.
Yeah.
And if we do have more COVID cases down the way, well, what does close contact mean? Because it could impact on a huge amount of people.
Yeah, it's very strange, I have to say. I mean, you've got the Wexford chairman coming out, you've got Brian Lohan coming out, on the face of it, two serious people in conversation with the HSE coming up with totally different stories. Maybe they were mates and were in the car together afterwards theory is blown open by the suggestion, I think on Lohan's part, that the HSE were told, well, it was your man based on the colour of his helmet as opposed to his name. So that doesn't sound like they're best mates hanging out together afterwards. So I don't know. I presume by tomorrow we'll have the Wexford response, and I don't know where that one ends. Just before you go, Mick, good news, I guess, in terms of moving towards normality. Ulster GA, they're pretty hopeful. They're going to have fans at games as early as this weekend, I think, because there's a loosening of restrictions in the 6 counties.
Yeah, it's looking good. Obviously, look, the vaccination process in the north is going at a much better rate than here. Or a much quicker rate, anyway, I should say. So yeah, it's going to be good to see. My understanding, I know the statement has just come out there a little while, so I haven't had a proper look at it. But my understanding is that I think certainly they won't be on general sale, these tickets. I think they'll be sold through the clubs, so there'll be a certain limit on it. And obviously, you have Armagh playing Donegal this weekend and Tyrone are playing Monaghan. So you have 2 teams from the Republic involved there. Their supporters won't be in the ground. But look, it's good to see people back, and hopefully, if there were stories at the weekend, that we could have significant numbers in stadia, certainly by the All-Ireland semi-finals, which would be really good.
I heard Micheál Martin on with Claire Byrne then on, what day is today? Tuesday. So yesterday morning, and he was cool on that one, I would say. Very cool on that one. Caution is very much the order of the day. So, look, who knows? Predicting these things makes fools of us all. Mick Foley of the Sunday Times, thanks so much.
No problem, Joe.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved